As Han Li was examining the young man's appearance, the young man chuckled and walked into the medicine garden. He enthusiastically said, "So Junior Marshal Brother is a disciple of Dayspring Mountain. Your face is quite unfamiliar. Could you be a new disciple? In that case, I could genuinely be considered your senior Marshal Brother." "My surname is Han. I entered the sect earlier this year. Senior Marshal Brother must be a brilliant disciple of Hidden Sword Mountain." Han Li withdrew his gaze and smiled. "So it's Junior Marshal Brother Han. I'm Hidden Sword Mountain's Qi Huan. I take care of a nearby spirit beast field along with several other senior marshal brothers. Junior Marshal Brother should pay a visit if he finds an opportunity. Although my cultivation isn't very high, I've been at the sect for 8 years and know many of the matters in the Drifting Cloud sect along with the various disciples of the 6 mountains. If there is anything you feel unsure of, please don't hesitate to ask me." The man had spoken elegantly the entire way through. Han Li faintly smiled. The eloquent man reminded him of little Abacus from all those years ago at the Seven Mysteries Sect. He was also eloquent, smooth at establishing relations, and proclaimed himself to be greatly knowledgeable. They were clearly the same kind of person. While Han Li did find this humorous, he didn't mean any ill will towards him. He crossed his arms and blinked, asking, "Many thanks for your kindness. However, may I ask if Brother Qi has any urgent matters for coming here?" Qi Huan revealed slight embarrassment and hesitated for a moment. He then rubbed the back of his head and said, "It can't be said to be an important matter. I merely came to ask Senior Marshal Sister Yuan for some help. I just didn't think that the caretaker of the garden for 6 years would suddenly leave. This has left me in a bit of a difficult situation." "You want help?" Han Li frowned and revealed a trace of doubt. "Isn't anything much. Surely Junior Marshal Brother knows that since us external affair disciples have inferior aptitudes, we aren't particularly valued. The sects, magic tools and medicine pills naturally won't fall into our hands. A year's worth of hard-earned spirit stones isn't even enough to buy a few cultivation progression medicine pills. As such, I along with many other martial brothers go to the nearby Greentrack Marsh and capture a few small rare animals to sell at the market. These snowcloud foxes aren't demon beasts, but their petite physique, adorable appearance, and human-like intelligence makes them in high demand with female disciples of the sect. That is why my martial brothers and I struggle to capture a lot of them. Not long ago, we discovered a strange snowcloud fox that had a faint trace of spiritual chi on it as if it had transformed into a low-grade demon beast. This was naturally a cause for joy. If we could capture it alive, it would net over 100 spirit stones, a rarely seen sum. Unfortunately, we were far too impatient and didn't think things through, allowing the fox to escape. Now, the demon beast has already fled deep into the marsh and is difficult to spot. Although we've searched through a majority of the marsh and have occasionally spotted it, it wouldn't allow us to come any closer. It would simply flee deeper inside." With that said, Qi Huan revealed a trace of regret. When he saw that Han Li wore a pensive expression, he paused for a moment before continuing. "We later left a few people to watch over it for a time and discovered that this strange snowcloud fox is fond of eating huanjing, especially huanjing that is over 10 years old. We reckon that if we wish to lure the beast, we would need huanjing that is at least 50 years old before it would fall into our trap. Junior Marshal Brother should know that any medicinal herb that is several tens of years old isn't something that can be bought with a few spirit stones. It would require more than a couple dozen. While we did have a few savings, we already pooled them together earlier to buy cultivation medicine. We don't have any spirit stones left over." Helpless, I could only think of Senior Marshal Sister Yuan's medicine garden. It seems there should be 2 or 3 stalks of huanjing that are at that age. That's why I paid a visit, but I didn't expect that she would be swapped with Junior Marshal Brother Han. Do you think you could spare a stalk of huanjing for us to use?" When Qi Huan asked his question, his voice grew softer and he somewhat stammered. It seemed he also knew that his request was somewhat excessive. After that was said, Han Li's face remained unfathomable. After a short moment of silence, he said, "I do have 2 stalks of huanjing that are over 50 years old which are according to your specifications. While it stands to reason that since this is the first time Senior Marshal Brother Qi has come to seek help, I shouldn't refuse you as your Junior Marshal Brother. However, Senior Marshal Brother Qi should realize I do not have the authority to give out the spirit herbs in this garden. If it were lacking something or if it were to disappear, I wouldn't have anything to say when Marshal Ant asks for them. I fear I would be punished. That is why I cannot help you." Han Li's words were quite calm, but the yellow-robed man couldn't help but reveal disappointment. "Junior Marshal Brother, please be at ease. I'm only going to borrow this spirit herb for several days. When the time comes, I will be certain to return it to you with thanks. We will also be extremely careful as we transport the spiritual herb so that there will be no mistakes. Of course, us senior martial brothers won't have you lend the spirit herb for nothing. After this succeeds, we'll be certain to give you a few spirit stones. We won't have you suffer a loss. I am sorry, this matter is quite important. I cannot allow you to use this medicinal herb. However, if you are lacking in spirit stones, I do have some saved up. I can lend a few to senior martial brother so you can buy a herb instead. After giving a staunch refusal, Han Li proposed an alternative with a smile. Yellow-robed man's unsightly expression quickly brightened. Is junior martial brother serious? If you can lend us spirit stones, it is natural that I won't need the spiritual herbs of your garden. However, a medicinal herb of that age will cost at least 30 spirit stones. Does junior martial brother truly have that much? His delighted expression soon revealed a trace of doubt. After all, this was by no means a small amount to a chi condensation cultivator. Han Li slowly said, "These spirit stones were saved up before I joined the sect and I've yet to use them. I'll lend them to senior martial brother for now. If these spirit stones could be turned into more, I wouldn't want to miss such a rare opportunity." So it turned out that junior martial brother Han is an expert in conducting business. Please don't worry about it, junior martial brother. With the Huanging, that snowcloud fox is practically ours. Huan couldn't help but grin upon finding Han Li had spoken truthfully. Han Li smiled and grabbed his storage pouch. He then handed over 30 various colored spirit stones to the young man without any reservations. Huan received the spirit stones with delight and pledged that they would succeed without problem. With only a bit of idle conversation afterwards, he took his leave with his mind occupied. As Han Li glanced at the departing young man, his smile faded away and he shook his head. He naturally didn't place the pledge to bring back the spirit stones in any regard. He merely didn't wish to offend anyone after having just arrived at the Drifting Cloud Sect. Han Li planned on staying at the Drifting Cloud Sect for quite a while. Being acquainted with a well-connected individual such as Huan could prove to be very useful. With that thought, Han Li reactivated the Medicine Garden's restrictions and returned back to the small stone mountain to continue his cultivation. 3 days later, Han Li was silently standing in front of an embarrassed Huan. He wasn't there to return the spirit stones, but rather to request Han Li's help to capture the snowcloud fox. Han Li pursed his lips and doubtfully asked, "You don't have enough people to capture a low-grade demon beast?" Huan chuckled and said, "Junior martial brother doesn't know how sly this snowcloud fox is, nor does he know how fast it is. Even common flying magic tools are unable to chase it down. We were originally going to have an intersect senior martial brother lend us a set of obscure track formation tools to deal with the fox, but this senior martial brother was unexpectedly assigned to a task yesterday and is no longer present in the sect. As such, we are lacking a member to use the formation. It would cost us quite a few more spirit stones in order to replace him, as there aren't any others that would be willing. That's why I came to request junior martial brother to assist us. Naturally, we will give junior martial brother a larger share of the spirit stones when we succeed." And Han Li heard this. He stroked his chin and pondered for a moment. Had Huan come to request his assistance any other time, he would have bluntly refused. There would have been no way he would wasted his time over such a trivial affair. But a few days before, as he was cultivating the 4th layer of the great development technique in seclusion, he felt his nerves grow restless and had no luck regaining his tranquil temperament ever since. It seemed this was a sign that he had reached a bottleneck for the great development technique. As such, this may prove to be a good opportunity, as bottlenecks are broken through by chance encounters. Perhaps going out would do something for it. Having thought that, Han Li nodded and said, "Since senior martial brother has spoken as such, I will assist you. I am quite curious where this green track marsh is." Han Li then lazily smiled. In English, this herb is known as Polygonatum sibericum, or as Solomon's seal. Huan was delighted upon hearing Han Li agree to help him. After deciding on a time and place for Han Li to meet his group, he happily departed. On the dawn of the following day, Han Li activated the restrictions on his cave residence and departed from the medicine garden. He then aloofly flew towards the agreed meeting spot on a flying sword magic tool. It was quite hilarious. He hadn't used flying magic tools ever since he reached core formation stage. It had been many years since he had last used one. This made it quite difficult for Han Li to find an unremarkable high-grade magic tool in his storage pouches. He was unable to find any magic tools that were inferior to this one. After flying for a quarter of an hour, Han Li arrived at the spot where he would meet Qi Huan, the top of a relatively tall hill. Han Li wasn't particularly surprised to see that no one else was here. He had arrived earlier than was arranged. Han Li casually found a large, clean rock and sat cross-legged on it before meditating and basking in the nearby heaven-earth spiritual qi. 2 hours later, when the blazing sun began to appear over the horizon, several black dots slowly flew across the sky towards the hill. Han Li rubbed his nose at their pitifully slow flight and bitterly laughed. After more time had passed, the group of people finally arrived on the hill at what Han Li considered to be a snail's pace. "Junior Marshal Brother Han, it is quite considerate of you to have arrived earlier than us," Qi Huan shouted out to Han Li with a beaming smile. His group was currently flying on low-grade disc magic tools that the sect distributed to all the disciples in the sect. It was no wonder why they were so slow. Qi Huan then landed on the hill, followed by 3 other qi condensation cultivators. Han Li stood up from the rock and turned his gaze to the other 3. "It was nothing. I only just arrived. Are these 3 senior martial brothers the rest of the party?" With 5 people, we can assume the 5 elements obscure track formation. There are many people, but a lack of spirit stones. These 3 are senior martial brothers Ma, Zai, and Wang. Qi Huan widely smiled as he pointed to the 3 behind him and gave them a quick introduction. These 3 weren't particularly old. The oldest amongst them was senior martial brother Wang at the age of 35. This man had a confident and scholarly appearance and possessed the highest cultivation among the 4, at the 11th layer of qi condensation. As for the 2 other youths, one was short and stout, while the other had a yellowish face. They appeared to be in their late 20s, and both possessed a cultivation at the 10th layer of qi condensation. Senior martial brother Wang seemed to possess an unordinary bearing. As soon as he was introduced, he widely smiled at Han Li and said, "We've already heard about junior martial brother Han. We owe much thanks for your help. If not for you, we would have had no means to capture the demon fox." His eloquent words left quite an impression. The other 2 also glanced at Han Li with kind expressions. It seemed they gained a rather favorable impression towards Han Li after lending them the spirit stones. Han Li naturally denied this out of politeness. "Senior martial brother is too kind. I merely wish to make more spirit stones." The white-robed cultivator surnamed Wang shook his head and sincerely said, "While these spirit stones can't be considered much to a foundation establishment cultivator, to us qi condensation disciples, they aren't such a paltry sum that can be easily lent to a stranger. Junior martial brother Han is truly someone that I'd like to be friends with." When Han Li heard this, he inwardly nodded and couldn't help but re-examine this man. Senior martial brother Wang's presence, conduct, and cultivation were all exceptional. He was obviously the leader of this group. As a result, Han Li smiled and thought to say something else when Qi Huan looked to the sky and suddenly reminded, "Senior martial brother Wang, junior martial brother Han, we can talk along the way. If we delay, we'll reach Greentrack Marsh without much time to catch the snowcloud fox. After all, we can't be away from the sect for too long, and our speed isn't fast." Senior martial brother Wang nodded his head and said, "Junior martial brother Qi makes sense. We truly have no time to waste, so let's go. If we have an opportunity in the future, let's have a proper chat." The group of 5, then, immediately released their magic tools and took to the skies. Junior martial brother Han uses a magic tool that he bought himself. It must be a mid-grade magic tool at the very least. Could it be that junior martial brother Han is actually a disciple of a clan? When the several people took to the skies, they caught sight of Han Li's flying sword and couldn't help but shout in surprise. After all, even if it was a mid-grade magic tool, it represented a hefty amount of spirit stones to external affair disciples such as themselves. When senior martial brother Wang saw this, his face revealed a trace of astonishment. Although he didn't say anything, a strange expression flickered across his eyes. The other cultivators also appeared quite flabbergasted. Having guessed that this would eventually happen, Han Li faintly smiled and said, "How could I possibly come from a clan? It's just that many years earlier during my time as a vagrant cultivator, I made a few spirit stones by using my shallow skill in refining talismans. Were it not for this, I wouldn't have been able to afford to so magnanimously lend senior martial brother Qi so many spirit stones." Their shock soon turned into that of envy instead. The short and stout senior martial brother Ma wore an expression of shock and curiously asked, "Talisman refinement. I didn't expect that junior martial brother Han possessed such skill. Since you were able to earn spirit stones, your skill in talisman refinement must be quite acceptable. What grade of talisman can you refine? Han Li indifferently answered, I mostly refine low elementary grade talismans. While there are 2 mid-elementary grade talismans I can refine, their success rate is rather poor. Junior Martial Brother Han can actually refine mid-grade talismans. Senior Martial Brother Wang was greatly moved and couldn't help but take another glance at Han Li. Han Li calmly said, That's right. I can refine the Thunderfire Talisman and the Guardian Talisman. Unfortunately, I only succeed once in every 6 attempts. It is barely enough to cover the cost of the materials. Senior Martial Brother Wang sighed and regretfully said, Junior Martial Brother Han is far too modest. From what I know, only a minority of external affair disciples of the talisman-centric Fire Cloud Mountain are able to refine mid-grade talismans. If Junior Martial Brother Han were to rely on this trade, he would be able to acquire an endless amount of spirit stones. Unlike us, who have to rack our brains every day for a method to acquire spirit stones. When the others heard this, their expressions turned dim. His words clearly touched a sore spot. You senior Martial brothers value me too highly. It's not like I can refine any high-grade talismans. I would have to spend an entire day inside a market and peddle low-grade talismans, not knowing when or even if they will be bought. As such, it isn't much like you think at all. But from my point of view, your business of capturing snowcloud foxes is quite impressive. Han Li's eyes stirred as he changed the topic. Having heard this, Kui Huan's group glanced at each other and soon bitterly smiled. Senior Martial Brother Wang eventually said, Junior Martial Brother Han might not know this, but this shady business isn't sustainable. We won't be coming back to Green Track Marsh after we capture this demon fox. Why is that? Han Li asked in astonishment. Kui Huan explained. One reason is that we've nearly captured all of the snowcloud foxes in the marsh. It is too difficult to find the remaining ones. The second reason is because the snowcloud foxes aren't selling anymore. After all, common snowcloud foxes aren't true demon beasts, and there are far too few female disciples that are willing to purchase one. Senior martial sisters with superior cultivations are looking to find a demon beast to become their spirit beast. So it's like that. It seems you senior martial brothers will have to find another way in the future. A trace of sympathy was revealed from Han Li's eyes. When Senior Martial Brother Wang heard this, he shook his head and said little more. As a result, the 5 flew out of the range of the drifting cloud sex restrictions and headed straight towards the center of the Dreamcloud Mountains. Junior Martial Brother Han, the Green Track Marsh is a rather neat place. It is located right on the border of the Ancient Sword Sect and our Drifting Cloud Sect, but because this place is somewhat remote and has been plagued by miasma for years, very few disciples ever venture there. As a result, we were able to monopolize the business of capturing the snowcloud foxes. This is a bottle of medicine pills for dispelling the miasma. After we arrive, Junior Martial Brother must take it every so often. Otherwise, you will be constantly vomiting and be plagued with diarrhea. Along the way, Senior Martial Brother Wang suddenly handed over a small jade bottle to Han Li. Many thanks for Senior Martial Brother's consideration. Han Li bluntly took the bottle and placed it within his storage pouch, but with his current cultivation, he had nothing to fear from miasma. Who knew if he would actually use the medicine? After flying for about 6 hours, they arrived at a tall mountain range. Their eyes suddenly brightened upon seeing a large expanse of verdant valley with trees and shrubbery of all kinds. However, a faint pink fog could be seen amongst the greenery. We're here, be careful when you descend. Senior Martial Brother Wang gave a quick warning before landing his magic tool and showing the way through the miasma. Han Li was the last to descend into the valley. Seeing that everyone around him had started to take the miasma treatment pills, he couldn't help but smile. With his body's essence having been purified, any miasma entering his body was cleansed with a single breath. At that moment, the group was flying straight towards the center of the valley. That demon fox is extremely clever, and we will only get one chance to capture it. As such, we must find a wide area so that it cannot escape from the formation. There is a flat field free of mud not far ahead of us. We won't have to fear it running away by digging into the mud. From Senior Martial Brother Wang's plans, it seemed he had deliberated much about this matter. Having followed Senior Martial Brother Wang this long, the others in the group naturally raised no objections. As for Han Li, he merely smiled and remained silent. A short moment later, the 5 arrived in a lush, flat field with short shrubbery sparsely scattered about. Without waiting for Senior Martial Brother Wang's instruction, Huan and the others landed on the field and examined their nearby surroundings. Following a quick discussion, Huan walked to the center of the field and dug open a small hole. He then carefully took out the Huanjing that he bought from the market and shallowly buried it in the hole so that it slightly emerged from the ground. Afterwards, he sprinkled a bit more dirt on top to make it look a bit more natural. A faint medicinal aroma immediately began to spread out. Good, that will do. The snowcloud fox has a very keen sense of smell. Even if the Huanjing is 3 feet buried, the snowcloud fox will surely smell its aged medicinal scent. Huang stood up and dusted off his hands with satisfaction. He then recalled something and took out a white formation flag. "All right, Junior Marshal Brother, take this. It's an obscure track formation flag." Han Li nodded his head and calmly received the small flag. At that moment, Senior Marshal Brother Wang began to brief the party. He solemnly said, "In a moment, everyone will take up a position on higher ground. When the demon fox appears, we'll all use the formation flags at the same time and envelope the field in an illusion formation. I am confident that, since the snowcloud fox only recently turned into a demon beast, it will not be able to flee from the formation." All the others nodded their heads in agreement before taking off on their flying magic tools. They all motionlessly floated about 150 meters in the air with formation flags in their hands. They each used shallow invisibility magic techniques to conceal themselves as they waited. Since this involved such a large amount of spirit stones, Huan and the others each appeared rather nervous as they unblinkingly stared down below. Even Senior Marshal Brother Wang wore a grave expression as he deeply stared. In contrast, Han Li was the most calm amongst them. He was holding the white formation flag in a single hand as he swept his gaze around. In fact, Han Li had already enveloped the area of a kilometer around them with his spiritual sense. He would be the first to know if any winds blew or any bush shook. The area became deathly silent as 2 hours passed by. Huan's neck began to ache as he stood on his magic tool from continuously watching down below. His face revealed faint impatience. He glanced at Senior Marshal Brother Wang and thought to say something to him, but after some hesitation, he shut his mouth upon further thought. There was nothing to complain about even if they had to wait a while longer. This was all in order to capture the demon fox. After yet another hour passed by, most of the group began to feel anxious. As for Han Li, his expression began to stir as he stared at a patch of nearby shrubbery. At that moment, Huan couldn't help but stir. He licked his lips and was about to say something when he heard Han Li's cold voice through a voice transmission. "Be careful, the demon fox has already arrived. It is hiding in a bush to the west. Don't scare it away." The other 3 also heard Han Li's voice transmission. In response, all of them glanced at the west bushes in alarm, only to discover that nothing strange could be seen. They couldn't help but be skeptical of Han Li's words, but their relaxed attitudes became vigilant once more. After the time it took to finish a meal, surprise was clear in their eyes as a foot-long, snow-white beast slowly walked out from a bush. It turned its head around with each step, and its whiskers occasionally twitched in hopeful anticipation. It was incredibly adorable. Upon seeing this, the other 4 grew vigilant and nervously grasped the formation flags in their hands. The white fox didn't glance up at the 5. After seeing that there was nothing strange in its surroundings, it grew slightly more courageous, and it began to silently walk in the direction of the Huanjing. However, when it arrived about 30 meters away from the Huanjing, it suddenly stopped, and its small pink nose suddenly sniffed the air. A trace of doubt flickered in its eyes as if it had discovered something. This scene had caused Senior Marshal Wang to lose his calm, and he loudly shouted, "Now!" His formation flag dropped to the ground in a streak of yellow light. When Han Li and the others heard this, they threw down the formation flags without hesitation, and each uttered several incantations. 5 different lights began to shine from the flags as soon as they touched the ground. A large expanse of yellow mist then enveloped the field, sealing it from every direction. The 5 elements' obscure track formation had taken effect. When the snowcloud fox saw this, it naturally knew that it was trapped. It immediately released several panicked howls and turned into a white blur as it shot into the yellow mist in an attempt to escape. The group of cultivators appeared somewhat relieved upon seeing this, but they didn't relax just yet. The illusion formation merely changed the direction of the white fox so that it turned in circles and stayed within the formation. The cultivators naturally wished to exhaust the beast first before they set to capturing it. The group of people beamingly smiled as if this operation was a success. After the small fox ran around inside the yellow mist, it suddenly blurred several times before collapsing to the ground. It no longer stood up. When the others saw this, they couldn't help but feel frightened and looked at each other in dismay. Senior Marshal Brother Wang's face grew sullen and he calmly said, "Do not release the restriction. We will continue to maintain it. Junior Marshal Brother Ma, go down and see what is happening. The obscure track formation is only able to trap, it does not cause harm. From the fox's sly nature, it is most likely pretending to be dead." The others were greatly relieved upon hearing him, and the youth surnamed Ma wordlessly descended. Li faintly smirked at the scene and glanced down with a mysterious smile. The short and stout Senior Marshal Brother Ma was rather fast. After a short moment, he had entered the yellow mist and was several steps away from the fox. He carefully grabbed the white fox's tail and boldly shook it several times. The white fox was unresponsive as if it were truly dead. As a result, the youth surnamed Ma felt slightly panicked and immediately pressed his ear against the beast's chest. Soon after, Senior Marshal Brother Ma flusteredly shouted from within the mist, "Senior Marshal Brother, quickly come down. The demon fox's body is ice cold. Perhaps its heart has stopped from fright." "Impossible." Senior Marshal Brother Wang couldn't help but change his expression. Hui Huan nervously said, "Senior Marshal Brother, let's release the spell formation and take another look. Our spiritual power cannot sustain the restriction for much longer." The cultivator surnamed Zai remained silent, but a trace of worry appeared in his eyes. The demon beast wouldn't be worth much if it were dead. After a moment of hesitation, Senior Marital Brother Wang nodded his head and said, "Fine. We'll release the spell formation since Junior Marshal Brother Ma has already grabbed onto the spirit beast." When Li heard this, he calmly rubbed his chin, but he didn't display the slightest opposition. Suddenly, the cultivators began to mutter some words and point to the ground, causing 4 of the flags to shoot back into their hands as streaks of light. In the instant the yellow mist dissipated, a short and stout youth placed his finger on the small beast's nose as if he were testing something. The 3 dropped down with sullen expressions. However, Li remained standing in his original position as he glanced at the white fox down below. His face revealed an odd expression. Before Senior Marshal Wang and the other 2 descended, the youth surnamed Ma had already placed his finger on the white fox's nose and angrily cursed, "Damn! This thing isn't breathing. Don't tell me that it died for nothing." With that said, he raised his head to the 3 and was about to say something more with an angry face. The 3 that were descending suddenly had their expressions greatly changed as they shouted, "Careful! The demon fox is alive. It was only playing dead." The 3 all shouted different words, but their meanings were all the same. The short and stout youth was rather quick-witted, and his expression abruptly changed upon hearing them. His hand instantly blurred and a white talisman appeared between his fingers. He fiercely slapped the talisman onto the fox's tail. However, his actions were clearly too slow. As soon as he extended his hand holding the talisman, he felt a sharp pain coming out from the hand that held onto the fox. He loudly shouted as he unconsciously released his grip. The fox slipped away and rolled onto the ground. In the blink of an eye, the fox's tail had become erect, and its fur became the same as needles. The youth's hand was now filled with holes and dripping with blood. When the other 3 saw this, they flew towards the small beast in furious alarm. The white fox wasn't about to easily be captured. It scuttled away and turned into a white streak as it shot 40 meters away. With several hops, it fled back into the shrubbery. In a moment of desperation, Senior Marshal Brother Wang and the other 2 surrounded the bush and released their magic tools as they slowly combed through it. But after a short moment, the 3 revealed astonishment. Apart from a pile of stones, there was nothing else in the bushes. The white fox had clearly disappeared without a trace. The 3 then despondently stood in place. Hui Huan unconsciously turned his gaze to the sky and shouted in alarm, "Yi, where is Junior Marshal Brother Han going?" At that moment, the others also discovered that Li was quickly flying off into the distance. Li's voice transmission soon arrived at their ear. "There is no need for Senior Marshal Brothers to be so flustered. That fox slipped away using a vision-obscuring technique and dug into the earth. Right now, I am using a magic tool to track it down. Once it comes back up, I'll capture it alive." With that said, Li flew off towards the edge of the marsh. When Senior Marshal Brother Wang heard him, he grew delighted and called out to the others before impatiently chasing after Li. The other 3 were close behind him. As they hurried along their way, Senior Marshal Brother Wang turned his head around and asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Ma, how is your hand?" The short, stout youth was at the very rear. He muttered with a shameful expression, "It's still good. Fortunately, the fox's tail didn't have any poison. It's merely a superficial wound." After all, it was his carelessness that had resulted in the fox's escape. Additionally, the issue had been called to attention by someone, causing him to feel quite embarrassed. Senior Marshal Brother Wang forced a smile and said, "That's good. Let's quicken our pace. Although I don't know what kind of magic tool Junior Marshal Brother Han is using to track the underground movements of the demon fox, we should hurry after him." Hui Huan turned around and repeatedly nodded his head in agreement. With an odd tone, he said, "Nevertheless, the intelligence of this evolved snowcloud fox is truly too much. Even Senior Marshal Brother Ma couldn't tell that the beast was playing dead. It was quite a shock." Grabbing onto his wounded hand, the cultivator surnamed Ma deeply blushed. Fortunately, at that moment, Senior Marshal Brother Wang spoke up for him. "We cannot blame Junior Marshal Brother Ma. Even if I had been the one to check, things might have ended up the same. It's just that the snowcloud fox was too sly." Having heard that, the youth surnamed Ma shot an appreciative glance at Senior Marshal Brother Wang and felt much better. As the three were talking, the youth surnamed Zai suddenly wore an incredulous gaze and suddenly shouted, "Everyone, quickly look. Junior Marshal Brother Han drilled through the stone wall. What should we do?" The others glanced ahead in alarm and discovered that the marsh's end lay ahead of them. A kilometer ahead of them, there was a mountain so huge that its peak couldn't be seen. There was a cliff that faced them that had its black walls cut through with a sword. Furthermore, Han Li was nowhere to be found. The four stood in front of the cliff and glanced inside the opening that had been cut with dumbfounded expressions. Han Li had truly gone inside the mountain. At that moment, he was holding a jade scepter with a wolf's head that enveloped his body in a faint yellow radiance. There was a meter-long yellow wolf in front of him that was opening a path with an earth movement technique. As the artifact spirit continued forward, the earth parted as if there was nothing there. Han Li followed after the wolf with a pensive appearance on his face. Underneath the scope of his spiritual seas, Ha Li saw the white fox strive its hardest to continue forward as it blurred 100 meters beneath him. With his profound abilities, it was only natural for him to see through the snowcloud fox's act. He even saw how the fox took advantage of a stone vein in the shrubbery to slip away. If this were a common low-grade demon beast, Han Li would have naturally warned the disciples as a favor. But Han Li was quite surprised to see that, when the spirit fox revealed itself, it possessed spiritual chi fluctuations that felt quite familiar to Han Li. In his astonishment, he carefully examined it, and found that the beast faintly carried the same spiritual chi fluctuations as the ninth spirit Ginseng's incarnation, the white rabbit. Han Li was delighted, believing that he had discovered another incarnation of a spiritual object. But after he examined the white fox once more, he grew somewhat puzzled. The spiritual chi fluctuations of the fox were far too small in comparison with the ninth spirit Ginseng. The difference between them could be said to be as wide as heaven and earth. Moreover, upon deeper inspection, he found that the snowcloud fox possessed a true flesh body, not that of a spiritual incarnation. Otherwise, the trifling obscure track formation wouldn't have been able to contain it. Although the small fox wasn't a spiritual incarnation in the end, Han Li was still deeply curious about it. He was certain that this pure spiritual chi had something to do with how this ordinary beast was able to turn into a demon beast. Having decided to investigate this fully, he allowed the fox to escape from the chi condensation cultivators and slowly followed after it, wishing to investigate the secrets of the fox. When the fox had arrived in front of the cliff, it had turned into a ball of white light and blurred into the ground without hesitation. As a result, Han Li summoned the earth attribute artifact spirit from the jade scepter and had the wolf silently open a path. Else, if he were to use a flying sword to cut into a mountain, the fox would be scared away. The mountain was obviously large. Han Li followed the white fox for at least a kilometer before it stopped, appearing inside what seemed to be a stone room. Han Li rejoiced and hastily ordered the yellow wolf to hurry and clear a path. At the same time, Han Li increased the power of his spiritual sense and began to examine the inside of the room. However, as soon as his spiritual sense neared the room, it was repelled by a strange force, and he was unable to move it any further. "Yi!" Han Li shouted out in surprise. His rush came to a stop and he suddenly grew careful. At that moment, he felt his body grow still and heavy as if it were bearing the weight of Mount Tai itself. He then heard an insipid voice. "Since a guest has come, there is no need to be overly cautious. Don't tell me that you're waiting for this elder to invite you in." Just as this was said, countless yellow lights began to appear around him as a huge force pushed him forward. Han Li merely saw a flash of light before he found himself inside the stone room. He was greatly alarmed and instantly waved the Jade scepter, covering himself in a red-yellow barrier of light. At the same time, he opened his mouth and spat out a dozen streaks of azure light that hurriedly revolved around him outside the barrier. It was only after this that Han Li could finally feel secure enough to look around. Without much effort, Han Li spotted the owner of the voice. About 40 meters in front of him, there was a young, black-clothed woman sitting cross-legged on a stone platform. The woman had a graceful appearance, but her complexion was deathly pale, and her luminous eyes seemed to glow with sparkling light. Han Li was shocked to see that one of her sleeves was empty. She was missing an arm. Before Han Li said anything, the young woman revealed shock upon seeing Han Li release his magic treasures. The young woman chuckled and her bright eyes stirred. So it turned out that your esteemed self wasn't a chi condensation junior, but a core formation cultivator. Your chi restraint technique is truly impressive. It even tricked me for a moment. As she sat, the snow-clawed fox was comfortably sitting in her lap and was curiously examining Han Li with an intelligent gaze. After sweeping his spiritual sense past her, Han Li's heart trembled. So it turned out that this was Senior's hidden cultivation area. I am truly lacking in manners. She appeared to be rather open and allowed his spiritual sense to easily sweep past her. He wasn't able to discover the slightest spiritual chi fluctuations. From what he had gathered based on her abilities and tone, this indicated that her cultivation was truly too great, not that she had some sort of cultivation concealing treasure. Han Li grew greatly vigilant. As Han Li pondered over how to deal with the situation, the young woman raised her flawless pale hand and caressed the snow-clawed fox. She leisurely said, "It appears that your age is quite young, yet you've already reached late core formation stage. That is quite exceptional." Han Li took a deep breath and calmly said, "Senior flatters me. Junior was only able to reach this stage through sheer luck. Might I know Senior's esteemed name?" The young woman sighed and said, "My name isn't anything special. If I said it, you wouldn't know of it. Let alone you, even this generation's nascent soul cultivators wouldn't know of it." When Han Li heard this, he felt a bitter taste in his mouth. Could it be that this young woman was an old eccentric that had remained isolated in her cultivation? Although Han Li's heart grew cold, he didn't reveal the slightest trace of panic. After all, he now possessed a great number of secret techniques, especially the recently learned bloodshadow evasion technique. With this, Han Li no longer held much fear towards nascent soul cultivators. Of course, Han Li knew he'd be no match for one in a fight, but he was confident he could escape. However, the aftermath of igniting a large quantity of blood essence would force him to remain in secluded cultivation for many years. That being said, Han Li had no idea why this mysterious character had hidden herself beneath the three sects. Was it because she had some sort of plot in mind, or was she like himself, only wishing to cultivate in a place with dense spiritual chi? Han Li swept his gaze around the stone room and astonishedly discovered that this room inside the mountain was sealed and lacked any doors or passageways. Additionally, apart from the stone platform that the young woman was sitting on, there wasn't any other furniture. The room's emptiness gave an extremely icy impression. Han Li also discovered that the room's walls were extremely crude, unlike the common clean cuts of a blade. Rather, these uneven surfaces seemed to come from the wanton swings of a huge axe. As soon as he saw this, a strange expression flickered in his eyes. As if having seen through Han Li's confusion, the young woman suddenly smiled and said, "Since fellow Taoist is puzzled, why not touch the stone walls and dispel your doubts?" When Han Li heard this, his heart stirred. He was truly curious. His recent scan with his spiritual sense discovered nothing strange. The room's walls appeared no different than ordinary stone. Since Senior has raised the topic, I won't be restraining myself. He slowly reached his left hand towards the stone wall. But to be careful, Han Li continued to observe the young woman with his spiritual sense, fearing she would launch an attack out of greed. Although she hadn't shown any malice, Han Li had lived through many years of hardship and had grown to become extremely careful. When Han Li felt the stone wall, he noticed nothing strange. Then, after some thought, he extended his finger and had a streak of azure swordlight emerge from the tip of his finger. Han Li stabbed his finger into the wall and shockingly discovered that the stone wall had completely blocked the attack. All that had resulted was a crackle when the light touched the wall. Han Li was dumbstruck, but at the same time, a trace of disbelief arose in his mind. His spiritual power surged as he suddenly struck the stone wall with a foot-long sword streak. As a result, the wall remained completely unharmed without even the slightest scratch. Han Li remained silent as an odd expression flickered across his face. He then pointed to one of his flying swords and had it strike the wall as an azure streak. Afterwards, it flew back with a clear ring. The strike had left an inch-deep cut, but the wall started to slowly smooth itself. After a short moment, the cut had disappeared without a trace. Han Li gasped in shock and couldn't help but turn his head towards her, asking, "What is this? How can it restore itself? Could it be that Senior placed it under the influence of a restriction or spell?" The young woman indifferently said, "Spells, restrictions. You think too highly of me. This is merely lapis stone. Also known as spirit-absorbing stone, it is an incredibly rare tool refinement material. It is impervious to the spiritual power of magic techniques and treasures, and only great strength can harm it." Han Li faintly frowned and turned back towards the stone wall. He slowly said, "Lapis stone. This junior is quite inexperienced and ignorant. I haven't heard of such a material before." The young woman casually explained, It is natural for fellow Taoists to not hear of this material. This material was incredibly rare even during the era of antiquity, and there aren't many that presently know of it." When Han Li heard this, he was flabbergasted. Just as he thought to say something else, the young woman sweetly smiled and interrupted him. "Although fellow Taoist cultivation is nearing the false nascent stage, your aptitude seems inferior. No, it would be better to say that it is terrible. It seems you've come across fateful encounters to be able to reach this stage of cultivation. Otherwise, your greatest efforts would have only taken you to the foundation establishment stage. Meeting me could also be considered an act of fate. If you don't find the idea undesirable, this elder has a treasure that I can lend to you." As soon as Han Li heard her, he revealed an odd expression, "Lend this junior a treasure." As if seeing through Han Li's suspicions, her expression sunk and she coldly said, "Of course, there will be conditions. First, this item will only be lent. You will have to return it. Secondly, after taking the treasure, there is something you must carry out on my behalf as payment for it." She rummaged through her robes for a moment before taking out a jade box in her hand. The jade box was pitch black and only the size of a fist. Its exterior was incredibly rough and crude, but there was a trace of yellow within the black. It seemed to be incredibly old. Han Li glanced at the young woman's face before turning his gaze back to the black case. Still silent, his expression fluctuated for a moment as he pondered for a moment. He then gravely asked, "Could Senior first tell this junior what is inside the box before he decides?" Upon seeing Han Li's hesitation, the black-clothed woman revealed a trace of impatience. With her brow raised, she pointed at the black box and said, "Surely you must know what a spirit well is. This box happens to hold a spirit well stone of the highest rank, known as a jade spirit well. At the very least, its spiritual chi should allow you to further stabilize your cultivation at the false nascent stage. It will allow you to condense a nascent soul with greater ease. This treasure has been with me for many years. If not for my current cultivation and my current inability to further use it, I wouldn't be lending it to you." With that said, she stroked the black jade box with a reluctant expression. "Jade spirit well." Han Li's expression changed several times. This would cut down the time it would take for him to reach false nascent state by 2/3. He completely swallowed his original words to reject her. After some hesitation, Han Li sighed and said, "Might I ask what Senior would like Junior to do? If you can't do something with your current cultivation, how could I possibly help you?" The young woman revealed an expression of joy seeing that Han Li was willing to agree. "Be at ease. I'm not asking you to kill someone. I'm only asking you to run errands. Although my cultivation is great, I cannot depart from this room for a certain reason. I only want you to deliver a letter for me." "You only wish for me to deliver a letter." This was completely beyond his expectations. "Of course, did you really believe that I'd have you kill someone?" The black-clothed woman covered her smile, revealing an overwhelming allure. When Han Li heard this, he faintly blushed. If it's only to deliver a letter, Junior is willing to accept. It was only natural for him to accept such a trivial task, considering the reward. The young woman seemed rather happy and raised her hand without another word. The box was wrapped in a green light and smoothly flew over to Han Li. Han Li received the black box and swept his spiritual sense over it. The spiritual chi within the box was truly abundant, as if it really contained a jade spirit well. Of course, given Han Li's cautious nature, he wanted to personally examine what was inside the box. With a flash of azure light from his hand, The black box opened by itself to reveal a dense, white mist of extremely pure spiritual qi, flooding the stone room in an instant. Han Li's heart stirred, and he examined the inside of the box with suspicion. He only saw a gentle white light that emitted from a sparkling white jade stone, only several inches long. Han Li was left startled not by the stone itself, but by the thumb-sized cow inside the transparent stone that was continuously wagging its tail as if it were alive. When the young woman saw Han Li's shock, a peculiar expression flickered from her bright eyes. She casually smiled and asked, "What's the matter?" This jade spirit well had quickly nurtured a treasure incarnation. Common spirit well stones are incomparable to it. If you were to cultivate with this, you would achieve twice the results with half the effort. After taking another glance at the jade spirit well inside the box, he eventually closed it and calmly raised his head. Right. With this item, Junior would only spend about a dozen years to reach false nascent stage instead of several tens. At that moment, Han Li had finally realized that the Jade Cloud Fox had been stained by the Jade Spirit Well's spiritual qi. That was why it had possessed such a faint, pure spiritual qi. It was quite possible that its transformation into a demon had something to do with the spirit well. Han Li's regained calm somewhat surprised the young woman. She couldn't help but take another glance at him in her astonishment. After drawing away a loose hair from her forehead, she casually said with an insipid voice, "All right, since I've already given this item to you, I'll be giving you the jade slip to deliver as well. There's also another jade box below on the platform I am sitting on. Tear off the talisman that seals it and hand it to me. There is a token in the box that I want you to deliver with it." "You want Junior to take it for you?" Han Li revealed suspicion and grew vigilant. "Humph, still afraid this old woman means you harm. If I could grab it myself, would I ask you to do it?" The young woman resentfully smiled and lifted up her long robes with her hand. Han Li's expression greatly changed upon seeing her legs. They were shriveled like firewood as they were crossed together. There wasn't the slightest flesh apart from some dried-up skin. It made for a rather fearsome appearance. But what surprised Han Li even more was the several silver sparkling chains that penetrated her legs that deeply bore into the stone platform. Han Li pursed his lips and raised his head to look at the young woman. Although his face appeared completely bewildered, he didn't ask anything further. He knew that the woman was certain to offer the explanation. As a result, the woman's face grew icy and she placed her robes back down. She dryly said, "I am in this stone mountain for the Lappy Stone. I had a room of it, and then I used the 2 chains to restrict my legs and trap myself here." "You trapped yourself?" Han Li was entirely confused by this. "That's right. My cultivation art is the underworldly slaughter arts. Although the cultivation art is incredibly fast and its might is extraordinary, it has a fatal flaw. Once it is completed, the cultivator will easily lose their human nature and become bloodthirsty. Back then, I had a fateful encounter with this technique and decided to cultivate it despite the advice of others. I had been extremely confident of my exceptionally powerful spiritual sense. After I successively cultivated this technique and entered nascent soul stage, I was no longer able to restrain my urge to kill and swept through the cultivation world at the time in a massive storm, resulting in no small number of enemies. As a result, I finally tangled in a battle with several nascent soul cultivators, resulting in the loss of my arm." The young woman expressionlessly glanced at her vacant arm and shook her head. "After receiving this injury, I thought long and hard. If I had no way to control myself then, I would die sooner or later. As a result, I steeled my resolve and asked my dear friends to forge the divine heaven-fire chains and the room of Lappy stone to imprison me. Due to fear I wouldn't be able to tolerate the loneliness or would suddenly become regretful, I gave the key to the chains to my best friend. They made a promise that they would come visit me every so often to see whether or not I've gotten better so that they may release me." After that was said, the young woman's expression grew sullen. "But I didn't expect that after coming only a few times, my good friend would suddenly disappear without a single word. I don't know whether or not they became impatient or if something unexpected happened to them. As such, I've been imprisoned here until now. Because this room was refined from Lappy stone, my spiritual sense is only able to reach out about a kilometer, despite having already reached the mid-nascent soul stage. I wished to call for help, but I lacked any method to. These divine heaven-fire chains were refined through a very peculiar method, connecting them to my primal soul. Although my cultivation has greatly increased and I am able to break the chains, I will instantly die from doing so. Now that destiny has had us meet, it seems the heavens have heard my plea. I no longer have to waste the rest of my life in this stone room." The black-clothed woman gave a general explanation of her past to dispel Han Li's suspicions. However, the story left Han Li dumbstruck. If she spoke truly, then her past must have truly been unfathomable. After a moment of deliberation, he hesitantly asked, "Could it be that Senior wishes for Junior to deliver a letter to your best friend? With so many years having passed, it wouldn't be unlikely for your friend to have passed on." The young woman sighed and bitterly smiled. "That's right. Even if that's the case, there is no need to be worried. I just ask that you to bring the key for the divine heaven fire chains. We were on good terms. If anything had happened, they should have passed it on to their descendants for safekeeping. It'll be the same if you found their descendants instead." After a moment more of thought, Han Li found this to be reasonable and that there were no gaps in logic. As a result, he stepped forward without speaking any useless words and circled around the stone platform to find a hole. Han Li carefully probed it with his spiritual sense, and he raised his brows. He reached in to find a jade box. The jade box had an antique style and was a faint yellow with odd flames engraved on it. The silhouette of a person could be seen standing within those flames, as if they were roaring towards the heavens. There was also a flickering golden talisman on the jade box that faintly emitted an aura that caused Han Li to feel uneasy. He unconsciously frowned. The black-clothed woman couldn't help but grow excited and said, "That's the box. Fellow Taoist, tear off the talisman and let me look at it." Han Li had already placed his hand on the jade case and was about to tear the talisman off. However, when the young woman's voice trembled in uncontainable excitement, Han Li felt an indescribable feeling of dread. After a moment of hesitation, Han Li withdrew his hand from the box and raised his head instead. Han Li's heart thumped upon seeing her. Her eyes had changed into a dark green, and her appearance had become warped. A fearsome, menacing gaze had completely replaced her previously dignified air. When the young woman saw Han Li raise his head, she was startled and regained her awareness. Her warped appearance and green eyes disappeared in an instant. She said in a relaxed tone, "Fellow Taoist, why are you looking at me? Why haven't you torn off that talisman? Don't forget, the Jade Spirit Well is a treasure rarely seen in this world and I've already given it to you. Why are you still hesitating?" Han Li glanced at the black-clothed young woman and looked down at the golden talisman tightly sealing the jade box. Without saying anything further, he narrowed his eyes and slowly walked towards her with the jade box in hand. "Fellow Taoist, what are you going? Stop, don't come closer." When the woman saw Han Li walking over with the golden talisman still on the jade box, her expression immediately changed and she began to shout with a panicked expression. When Han Li saw the young woman's reaction, his expression immediately became gloomy and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. He wordlessly raised the box as he approached her. Although he didn't know why she was so scared of this talisman, he knew she wasn't harboring any good intentions toward him, and he decided to drop any formalities. The black-clothed young woman had completely lost her mind to fear as he approached and instantly slapped the stone platform beneath her to launch herself away. However, this action activated some sort of restriction. Just as she reached 3 meters away, red light enveloped her and brought her back to her original position. At that moment, the jade box flew out of Han Li's grasp and released a series of clear rings as it flew towards the woman's head. The golden talisman on the box flourished with radiance and released countless golden talisman characters that slowly floated down towards the young woman. "No," the black-clothed woman shouted in despair. Her beautiful appearance warped in an instant. She quickly used her sole arm to cover her face and dropped her head down to her chest, desperately trying to keep her face away from the talisman. As the golden talisman characters finally dropped down to the young woman's shoulder, golden light sparked and released a wisp of green smoke. The young woman's body greatly trembled as she released a monstrous wail of anguish. The wail was deafeningly sharp and inhuman, much to Han Li's shock. He unconsciously took several steps back, and he felt cold sweat line his palm. In one hand, he tightly grabbed onto his spirit beast pouch with the gold-devouring beetles and tightly clutched onto the jade scepter with the other as he solemnly stared at the stone platform. As further talisman characters fell onto the black-clothed young woman, even more green smoke began to surge from her body. After a short moment, the green smoke had enveloped her. Her body could no longer be seen, but the flashes of light and wails never ceased. In a moment, the wails became screeching. In another, they became frantically hoarse. The sudden and unceasing transformations of the monstrous wails were awful to behold. As Han Li watched in apprehension, he held his breath and pursed his lips. A fishy scent had filled with room as soon as the green smoke appeared. Each breath of it immediately caused him to feel a wave of dizziness and nausea, much to his surprise. The smoke seemed to be extremely poisonous. Soon after, cracks began to sound out from within the green smoke. Han Li was startled. Before he realized what those sounds were, he heard a swish of wind. A dark green claw that was tangled in silver chains suddenly extended from the mist at the speed of lightning, and fiercely swiped towards Han Li at the corner of the room. The claw was as flexible as a snake, suddenly bending and reaching out 10 meters towards Han Li, trying to grab him. Han Li trembled and his grip tightened on the jade scepter. Just as he thought to execute a technique, the silver chains suddenly restrained the ghostly claws in a storm of sparks, filling the room with a scorched stench. A painful moan roared from within the smoke, and the sharp claw quickly withdrew. Han Li stared into the mist with tightly shut lips, his expression continuously fluctuating. After some consideration, Han Li's expression grew sullen, and he drew back with 2 additional steps. With the lapis stone wall close against his back, he poured a great amount of spiritual energy into the jade scepter, thickening the red-yellow light barrier around his body and causing him to feel somewhat more at ease. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, yet another monstrous scream left the mist, and the radiance of the jade box's golden talisman gradually dimmed. The amount of talisman characters it produced had also started to grow sparse. With all that he had seen, Han Li mused, it seems the golden talisman is capable of restraining either ghosts or demons, but it has a rather limited amount of spiritual qi. It will eventually expire and will no longer be able to restrain her. Fortunately, Han Li's worries were unfounded. In the following moment, the final scream faded away and the smoke had grown still. However, the golden talisman's light had yet to fade away. Han Li glanced at the golden talisman and didn't immediately approach it. Instead, he waited for a moment more. After the golden light faded away and the jade box fell into the dense smoke, Han Li's expression began to stir. He waved his arm and put away the spirit beast pouch for the time being. He then formed an incantation seal with the newly freed hand and began to mutter something in a low voice. In the following instant, a red, egg-sized fireball appeared in front of him. After taking a glance at the fireball, Han Li pointed into the smoke and the fireball flew into the green smoke as a streak of red light. He raised his brows and uttered, "Explode." Boom, the smoke was swept up in a gale and was scattered in an instant, only to be replaced with a burnt stench. As expected, fire attribute techniques were the most effective means of dealing with poisonous qi. Han Li stood in place as he felt hot winds blow against him. A strange expression stirred in his eyes as he stared at the stone platform while the smoke cleared away. When he eventually saw what was there, he felt his heart jump and he dryly swallowed as a shiver went down his spine. There was a human-shaped silhouette on the platform that remained still, and it was unknown whether it was still alive. Although it could be said to be human-shaped, there was dense green fur covering its body. Additionally, it smelled very much like a rotting corpse. Although he didn't see what it truly was, it was absolutely not human. Like its human form, it had only one arm, but this arm was much longer and had pitch-black claws. This was clearly what had attacked Han Li earlier. What was even more notable were the many chains that wrapped around its body. Not only did they bind its legs and arm, but it also pierced through its chest and back. It had been entirely restrained. Without much further thought, Han Li pointed to his flying swords and had them pierce into the monster. As a result, a series of muffled clangs sounded out. The green fur had repelled them without harm. Han Li wryly smirked, but he didn't feel particularly surprised. Given what heavy restrictions the monster was subjected to, Han Li would have been somewhat astonished if that had actually cleaved off its head. It couldn't have possibly been that simple. Han Li waved to the swords and had them fly back towards him. He then took a few steps forward and lightly flung his sleeve towards the green-haired monster. At that moment, an azure mist of light shot out from Han Li's sleeve and gently enveloped the monster, resulting in it dropping to the floor with its true appearance revealed. With its hair parted, it was revealed to have only skin and bone as if it were a dried-up skeleton. Its half-open mouth had a pair of inch-long fangs emerging from it, making for a frightful appearance. "This is..." Han Li glanced at the green fur on the body and took another look at its face. It faintly felt familiar as if he had seen it before in a jade slip. After lowering his head in contemplation, its name suddenly appeared in his head. He couldn't help but raise his head and frightfully shout, "Cadaver demon!" He suddenly recalled the fearsome legends of this vicious spirit from times of antiquity. Cadaver demons were a type of Xianxia. However, it was greatly different from cultivator refined corpses and ordinary jiangshi that naturally rose from deep within the earth. It only appeared under extremely rare and specific circumstances. Although no one knew of the method by which this fearsome spirit took form, there were two main conditions that a cadaver corpse required to take form. First, there must be a corpse of a nascent soul cultivator at the very least. Corpses of mortals and inferior cultivators weren't sufficient for a cadaver demon to form. Secondly, the corpse must have heavenly spirit roots that are either wood or earth attribute. Otherwise, it wouldn't be able to draw support from nature to rise once more. In addition to this, the cultivator must have died harboring immense grievances. With the soul unwilling to return to the path of reincarnation, it is retained by the corpse. As time passed by with some other unknown conditions fulfilled, the soul and corpse would fuse together to form the monster known as a cadaver demon. The monster could be said to be half human and half jiangshi, as well as half jiangshi and half ghost. Not only did it lack the fatal weakness of sunlight that ghost demons and jiangshi possessed, but it also possessed most of its memories and techniques from when it was alive. And because it died harboring grievances, this fearsome spirit was undoubtedly bloodthirsty. They were particularly fond of hunting down cultivators and slowly torturing their souls with corpsefire for their amusement as they feasted on them. It had been ages since the last cadaver demon had appeared in the cultivation world. Recalling the stories about the cadaver demon's incredibly durable body, Han Li felt slight dejection. According to the rumors, he could only use true fire to slowly burn the corpse or extract the soul and seal it. The cadaver demon clearly wasn't dead. It was merely restrained for the time being by the unknown golden talisman. He reckoned it would take quite a while before the cadaver demon would be able to recover its strength. With that thought, Han Li's gaze fell onto the jade box at the corpse demon's side. Since it had suppressed the cadaver demon and still hadn't burned to ash, it must be a seal of sorts. From how closely related the jade box was to the cadaver demon and the golden talisman that sealed it, it stands to reason that the box must have contained the cadaver demon's soul. But in that case, why was the cadaver demon able to control its body? It had also managed to nearly deceive Han Li into opening the jade box with its great intelligence. Could it be that the soul extraction was incomplete and that a remnant of the soul remained inside her body? Also, why did the cadaver demon have a jade spirit well in its possession? Did it acquire it after it was trapped? As Han Li was puzzling over this, he frowned and sank into deep thought. After a short moment, Han Li bluntly tossed the useless question away and began to look around for a way to leave. He would need to be at least at the nascent soul stage to be able to burn away the cadaver demon with true fire. Additionally, it would take several months at the very least. Even if Han Li had the cultivation to do so, he wouldn't waste the time or effort on such a fruitless task. He'd rather just get as far away from here as possible and have the cadaver demon continue to remain in isolation. As for any unwitting cultivators in the future that wandered in here, that wasn't any of his business. As for whenever the cadaver demon escaped from here, the great sects nearby could deal with it instead. But in the end, Han Li's gaze fell onto the jade box once more. After glancing at the jade box with the golden talisman several times, he hesitated for a moment before taking it into his hand. Afterwards, he placed it into his storage pouch with an unchanged expression. The golden talisman on the jade box had released truly peculiar talisman characters. He planned on giving it a proper examination later on. As for whether or not he would open the box, that decision would be left for once he finished condensing a nascent soul. At that point, he would be completely safe from any harmful spirit it may contain. With the divine devilbane lightning, the weeping soul beast, and a nascent soul cultivation, he would have nothing to fear. Han Li waved the jade scepter in his hand, and the light barrier around him suddenly disappeared, revealing the yellow wolf. He intended on having it use the earth movement technique to open a path through the stone room. The lapis stone was still stone after all, regardless of how rare and hardy it may be. As such, it should still be affected by the earth movement technique. With that in mind, Han Li was about to have the wolf press onward when his expression suddenly stirred. He suddenly turned around and looked at the motionless cadaver demon. After tilting his head in thought, he sighed and stepped towards it. He raised the leg of the cadaver demon to reveal a pit underneath it. Inside the pit was the snow-cloud fox that was now staring up at Han Li with pitiful eyes. Han Li faintly smiled and muttered, "You're rather intelligent to take refuge here." With that said, Han Li waved his arm and an azure light reached towards the small fox. The white fox knew that things were far from good and hastily jumped in an attempt to flee. However, Han Li's azure light was remarkably fast and caught it in midair. The azure light quickly wrapped around the fox before quickly bringing it into Han Li's grasp. Han Li grabbed the white fox by its nape and turned around to leave the stone room. As he walked, he unconsciously muttered, "You are quite persistent. Not only did you manage to preserve your life through that, you even managed to survive until now in the company of the cadaver demon. Truly inconceivable." How that's inconceivable. Just as Han Li said that, his steps came to a sudden stop as a thought appeared in his mind. With a greatly changed expression, he suddenly waved his arm and ruthlessly flung the white fox towards the stone wall. In that instant, a trace of resentment appeared within the demon fox's eyes. Those short and small limbs sharply increased in length, and it swiped its snow-white claws at his chest. A huge clang shook the room. In the midst of Han Li's furious alarm, the white silhouette blurred as it was flung towards the wall. Preventing itself from being smashed, the small fox deftly rolled several times in the air and distorted its body to fall down at a corner of the room. An ice-cold gaze appeared in its eyes, and it stood unscathed as it gazed at Han Li. Its green eyes faintly revealed a trace of disappointment. Shaken with fear, Han Li glanced at the large hole left behind on his clothes, revealing a sparkle of green light. It was the inner armor that he had looted off of Wen Tianren. After the royal scale plate had been destroyed, Han Li had decided to replace it with this inner armor instead. Despite not knowing its name, Han Li could tell it wasn't inferior to the royal scale plate in the slightest. Although the sly and fierce attack had caught Han Li off guard, it was naturally incapable of piercing through an armor that even common magic treasures couldn't harm. With his calm regained, Han Li stared at the white fox and gloomily asked, "Who are you?" That morphed attack was something a low-grade demon beast isn't capable of. At the same moment, he waved the Jade scepter and tried to emit a light barrier around him. However, he was shocked to discover the Jade scepter was completely unresponsive. Han Li bewilderedly glanced at the yellow wolf to discover that it was standing in place without any changes. Facing a powerful enemy, Han Li couldn't further investigate this and ordered the flying swords above him to form a curtain in front of him. With the droning flying swords protecting him, Han Li finally felt somewhat more at ease. In the following moment, Han Li was shocked to hear human words come from the snowcloud fox's mouth. "Who am I? I'm the one who you just attacked. Don't tell me you've forgotten about me already." The familiar woman's voice revealed a trace of mockery as the fox suddenly stood up on its hind legs. In that moment, the demon beast began to transform before Han Li's eyes. Within a few breaths' time, the white fox grew several times its size and shed the entirety of its fur in an instant. It transformed into a gorgeous young woman with a fox's tail. Han Li pursed his lips and could no longer keep calm. His entire face was filled with astonishment. This woman appeared exactly the same as the black-clothed woman except for the fact that she was nude. With her ample chest bared, she glanced at Han Li and flirtatiously said, "Huh, my demon fox incarnation is not bad at all." However, the depths of her bright eyes didn't contain the slightest warmth. After Han Li took a deep breath, he recovered his calm and coldly said, "That was you." He unconsciously glanced at the stone platform and saw that the corpse demon was completely still. With his heart relieved, he turned his sights to the newly formed woman. It would be reasonable to say that any demon beast that could assume human form was grade 8 at the very least. However, when he examined the cadaver demon's white fox incarnation, he saw that it only had the cultivation of a 7th grade demon beast. Han Li felt surprise but not fear. However, he didn't dare to completely trust the judgment of his spiritual sense. With a solemn expression on his face, he recalled what he had read about high-grade demon foxes. Nearly all demon foxes of this level were able to fully utilize illusion techniques. Many were even capable of toying around with similar grade cultivators without their knowledge. Their gift for concealment was among the best of all demon beasts. Previously, Han Li had felt somewhat doubtful of those words. He had managed to examine the woman with his immense spiritual sense with ease. However, since the cadaver demon had the ability to transform and retain this cultivation, why wasn't it able to take off the golden talisman of the Jade box? Could it be that the demon still feared the golden talisman? Even in that case, with her cultivation, she would be able to kidnap a low-grade cultivator and force them to tear it off. As Han Li began to expressionlessly ponder, he faintly felt that the demon fox wasn't so simple as just the cadaver demon's incarnation. There was certain to be something hidden deeper. With that thought, he regained his calm and glanced at the naked young woman before him with a trace of harsh killing intent. Regardless of whether or not you're the cadaver demon's incarnation, only one of us will be leaving alive. With this staunch declaration, Han Li pointed to his flying swords without hesitation and had the azure sword curtain surge with light. It then transformed into a mist as it engulfed the demon fox's corner of the room in an enormous display of strength. When the young woman saw Han Li's attack, she smirked and licked her luscious pink lips. With a bewitching, bone-shaking laugher, she faded away in a flash of white light. The azure mist ended up striking nothing but the lappy stone wall in a series of small rings. Han Li frowned and quickly swept his spiritual sense across the room, but found no trace of the demon fox. Her concealment technique was far beyond his own. However, Han Li still remained calm. He coldly sorted and slapped the storage pouch, taking a small silver bell into his hand. "Go," Han Li shouted. The small bell began to glow and instantly flew to a meter above his head. Without the slightest delay, Han Li formed an incantation gesture with his hand and opened his mouth, releasing a breathful of azure chi towards the small bell. The ancient treasure flowed with light before releasing a loud clang. Since this room was sealed, the silver bell's sound attacks should be slightly more effective. As of that moment, the entire lappy stone room began to reverberate, and the air within 20 meters of Han Li began to distort. Soon after, the naked woman revealed herself in a flash of white as she staggered from the attack. Han Li rejoiced and was inwardly puzzled. The demon fox appeared weaker than common grade 7 demon beasts. Was this because the cadaver demon had sustained damage before the incarnation took form? With that in mind, Han Li flicked his hand without any further hesitation, shooting 5 streaks of azure sword chi towards her. The meter-long streaks of light penetrated through her body in an instant. Then, with a miserable scream, the woman fell to the ground as a puddle of blood began to form around her. Han Li felt rather stunned at how easy it had been. While he was at a loss, the jade scepter in his hand suddenly grew hot and pulsed with red light as it surrounded his body in a dark red light barrier. Immediately after, several silver strands attacked him from a seemingly empty area. The light barrier's sudden appearance had managed to just block them just in time. "What, no?" A man and a woman's voice shouted at the same time. After recovering from his fright, Han Li opened his mouth and spat out an azure streak in the direction from where the silver strings were launched. A series of alluring, soul-shaking laughs suddenly sounded out as a flash of white light appeared at another place in the room. The naked woman appeared with her chest loosely held in her arms. Han Li's expression became extremely unsightly, and his gaze turned towards where the young woman had previously fallen. However, there was no longer anything there. Han Li pursed his dry lips and sullenly said, "Illusion technique." The young woman widely smiled and didn't respond. Instead, her gaze dropped down towards the yellow wolf at his side, and her face revealed a trace of astonishment. When Han Li saw the young woman reveal this expression, his heart stirred and he glanced at the wolf as well. Afterwards, his attention turned to the jade scepter in his hand, and his expression began to waver. The light barrier blocking the fox's cunning strike wasn't something that he had ordered. Could it be that the artifact spirit had taken the initiative to rescue him? At that moment, the mystery behind the huge silver wolf, the combined form of the red and yellow wolves, was suddenly brought to Han Li's mind as his heart grew heavy. The young woman twisted her slender waist and thought to say something when the jade scepter in Han Li's hand pulsed before a red wolf emerged before Han Li in a flash of red light. As soon as it appeared, both the red and yellow wolves merged together in a dazzling display. Han Li was deeply shocked by the scene and tightened his grip on the jade scepter, not daring to make any rash movements. As he expected, a ring of silver light erupted from the converging yellow and red light, revealing a 3-meter-tall silver wolf from within it. The wolf floated in the air as it stared at the demon fox with interest. Although the naked woman didn't know what the silver wolf was, for some reason she had felt her heart drop as soon as it had appeared, arousing a faint sense of foreboding. Under the stare of the huge wolf, her charming expression unconsciously froze. It was then that she realized things were far from good for her. With raised brows and a serious expression, she spat out a pink, fragrant mist, concealing her entire body in an instant. The pink mist quickly spread throughout the air and enveloped most of the room in the blink of an eye. Although Han Li didn't know what purpose this pink mist had, he didn't dare to breath it in. His expression immediately grew stern as he grabbed the spirit beast pouch at his waist. Regardless of how formidable the demon fox's technique may be, he didn't believe that it would be able to endure the attack of the tens of thousands of gold-devouring beetles. But just as Han Li was about to open the spirit beast pouch, the silver wolf had taken action, much to his astonishment. The silver wolf suddenly opened his mouth and released countless fist-sized spheres of silver light into the mist in a violent torrent. Then, with a howl, the wolf charged forward in a streak of silver light. Han Li was at such a loss that he stopped summoning his gold-devouring beetles. In the next moment, all of the silver spheres that had entered the mist began to burst. Silver light intertwined with the pink mist, causing the demon fox to shout in furious alarm. With that, the silver wolf then entered the mist. "What are you doing? Impossible. You, no." As if having seen something unbelievable, the demon fox began to scream out in fright. An instant later, the miserable wails faded away as quickly as they had appeared. When Han Li heard this, his expression changed as he stared into the mist with narrowed eyes. Fortunately, the mist began to dissipate from a lack of spiritual power and revealed the previous hidden scene. Han Li's face distorted at the sight of the demon fox's naked form trembling on the ground. Pink and silver light enveloped different halves of the body, with the lights intertwined at the body's center, continuously releasing sparks as if they were in opposition. "Possession?" Han Li shouted in his bewilderment. The silver light suddenly gained the advantage and slowly encroached on the pink light's territory. "No." The young woman suddenly wrapped her head in her arms and screamed in pain. Soon after, her body began to tremble as its body began to change in a series of white flashes. A few seconds later, the woman's form turned back into that of an exquisite white fox. By that point, the last remnant of pink light had been consumed by the silver glow, and the body's astonishing cultivation disappeared without a trace. It now only appeared to be the original low-grade demon beast. The white fox sat motionlessly on the ground as if it were completely exhausted, but the silver light enveloping its body only became more radiant. Han Li tightly held onto the jade scepter in his hand, and uncertainty appeared on his face. It was clear that the silver wolf had succeeded in its possession of the body, but he didn't know if he could continue to restrict or order the silver wolf while it was in the fox's body. A long while later, Han Li released a long sigh. Regardless of how it could be seen, the white fox couldn't pose the slightest resistance with its current cultivation. As such, there was no need to prematurely strike it down. Moreover, regardless of the silver wolf's actions, it seemed to bear him no malice. Of course, Han Li had always wanted to know more about the history behind the silver wolf, but before he could even ask, the artifact spirit had taken action of its own accord. It was clear that the silver wolf had quite a story behind it, as he had long since guessed. As a result, Han Li sunk into deep thought as his expression began to fluctuate. The white fox's silver radiance eventually dimmed, and it began to stand up on its four limbs. As if unsuited to the fox's body, it knelt down after only taking a few steps. Han Li couldn't help but chuckle at the sight. Having heard this, the white fox turned its head to Han Li with a trace of irritation clear in its eyes. He then heard a woman's voice. "What's so funny? I've just possessed this body. It is only natural that I've yet to adapt to it." Just as Han Li heard this, his smile froze as he rubbed his nose and muttered, "So you're also a woman?" The female voice coldly said, "Humph, who's a woman, do you mean me?" When Han Li heard this, he wryly smiled in response and withdrew his magic swords that were revolving at his side. He then calmly said, "I don't care if you're a man or a woman. I just want to hear of your origins." The white fox crouched and calmly glanced at Han Li. "My origins? Am I not the artifact spirit of the ancient treasure in your hand?" Han Li frowned and gloomily replied, "Of course I know you're an artifact spirit. However, I've never heard of an artifact spirit being capable of possession." The white fox curled its mouth and casually said, "This merely illustrates your ignorance. Have I not already demonstrated that it is possible?" When Han Li heard this, he grew silent for a moment. After a short moment, he lifted the jade scepter in his hand and began to carefully look it over. A vigilant expression appeared in the white fox's eyes, and she coldly asked, "What do you plan on doing?" Han Li sighed and calmly asked, "Nothing in particular. I'm merely curious as to how useless this jade scepter is now that you've successfully possessed the demon fox. If I were to shatter this, would anything happen to you?" The white fox's expression massively changed and it fiercely glared at Han Li. But after only a short moment, it thought of something and its imposing attitude soon disappeared. The white fox insipidly said, "You don't need to test me. It is true that if you shatter the Jade Scepter, I will disappear as well. After all, artifact spirits are one with the treasures that contain them. Afterwards, white light flashed from the fox's body, and a huge pressure began to emit from it. Han Li's heart trembled, and his expression immediately became tense. The white fox glanced at Han Li and said, "There is no need to be worried. I merely find it inconvenient to speak to you in beast form, so I am transforming into a human." When Han Li heard this, he felt somewhat surprised but a bit more at ease as well. At that moment, the white fox glowed with a blinding silver light, causing Han Li to unconsciously take a few steps back. The white glow faded away to reveal a young woman with an alluring beauty. Apart from her shining green eyes being replaced with a clear black, the woman's appearance was exactly the same as before it had been possessed. It seemed a demon beast's human form was permanent, and it was incapable of being changed. As Han Li pondered to himself, the young woman unconsciously covered her body. She then hesitantly asked, "Does fellow Taoist have any clothes? I feel unaccustomed to this." After that was said, the woman revealed an expression of slight shyness. Han Li was stunned for a moment, but he soon took out a few reserve clothes from his storage pouch and handed them over. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist." The young woman took the clothes and began to drape them on her body, covering herself. Han Li's expression stirred. The woman's every action exuded an undescribable gracefulness. Even women from noble households would find it difficult to match her. It was incredulous that she was originally a silver wolf. Having finished putting on her clothes, the woman turned to Han Li and slowly said, "You may call me Silvermoon. As for my origins, it's not that I don't wish to tell you, but I cannot remember them myself. You should know that when a demon's soul is refined into an artifact spirit, their consciousness will fade away, and they become an obedient entity for their master to command. But for some unknown reason, I one day regained awareness and recalled a few memories of when I was alive. Although it is a rather small amount, I regained some ability for independent action. I faintly recalled that I was once a member of the Silver Wolves clan. As such, I've named myself Silvermoon Wolf since I do not have any memory of my original name." As she said this, the young woman elegantly took a few steps as if to slowly get accustomed to her new body. A pensive expression appeared on Han Li's face as he stroked his chin. "The Silvermoon Wolves clan. I have no records of such demon beasts." Silvermoon frowned and said, "This merely came from a portion of my shattered memories. Perhaps I remembered incorrectly." Han Li pondered for a moment before solemnly asking, "All right, you've lost the memories of your past, but what about the matter of an artifact spirit taking possession of another body? Don't tell me that all artifact spirits can do this. If this were true, the cultivation world would have long ago been thrown into disarray." The young woman coldly smiled and countered, "Do you really believe that I can casually possess any flesh body as I wish?" Han Li narrowed his eyes and stared at the woman. "What do you mean?" Silvermoon pursed her lips and explained, "The technique that I just used can't strictly be considered possession. It is merely an innate ability of us Silvermoon wolves called soul devouring. By using our manifested souls, we may directly attack the soul of another. Of course, once we devour their souls, we may temporarily take control of the new body. However, this cannot last for a long period of time. Otherwise, our souls will merge with the possessed body, and we will no longer be able to return to our own. Additionally, this ability is a double-edged sword. Our spiritual sense isn't particularly stronger than those of other demon clans. If we were to come across an opponent with a stronger spiritual sense, our lives would be thrown away. As a result, none dared to rashly use it. However, to someone without a body like me, it doesn't particularly matter." Having seen Han Li's astonishment, she guessed what Han Li was about to ask and hurriedly continued, "Please don't ask me about the specifics of soul devouring. It is only something I have an instinctual grasp of. But there is no need to worry. Soul devouring possesses many restrictions and isn't something that I can casually use. It would have been impossible for me to use it as an artifact spirit if I weren't originally a Silvermoon wolf. Had I not been fortunate enough to come across this four-pupiled fox, I wouldn't have used it. I would have merely chosen to remain inside the Jade Scepter instead. According to my memories, the four-pupiled foxes were innately vulnerable against Silvermoon wolves. With its spirit already possessed by the cadaver demon, and without having to deal with the original body's master, I was luckily able to succeed in possessing it." Han Li closely looked into her eyes and found nothing strange. He couldn't help but doubtfully ask, "Four-pupiled fox, was it not a snow-clawed fox?" Its namesake, the innate devil pupils, only appear after its cultivation has reached the greater success stage. Our Silvermoon wolves' soul-devouring is a joke in comparison to their devil eyes with their fearsome deadliness. But while their appearance is extremely similar to a common snowclawed fox, when it fully used its technique, I immediately recognized it. Silvermoon faintly smiled and unconsciously revealed a captivating beauty. And Lee pursed his lips and raised his most pressing concern. The demon fox's cultivation reached that of a grade 7 demon beast. That isn't considered having reached greater success stage. And how come it is capable of taking human form when it had yet to break through to metamorphosis stage? Moreover, how was the demon fox's cultivation able to change so suddenly? Don't tell me that you and the demon fox have been concealing this body's true cultivation all along. Haha, fellow Taoist sure has many questions. However, I haven't spoken to anybody else in countless years, so I don't mind. I truly don't know why the demon fox was capable of transforming. I reckon that the cadaver demon saw that the situation was disadvantageous and decided to use a technique to forcefully graft a portion of its cultivation onto the demon fox. That was how its cultivation was able to reach such heights. The four-pupiled fox's true cultivation is still that of a genuine low-grade spirit beast. Also, the cadaver demon wasn't able to stray too far away from its body once it grafted its cultivation onto the demon fox due to the room's restrictions. As for why I am currently in human form, it is mostly because I am raising my cultivation to the border of a grade 8 demon beast by using secret techniques. However, my cultivation will slowly decrease, and I will turn back into a demon beast. It will be at least a month before I can use this technique again. After that, Han Li didn't continue his questioning. Instead, he lowered his head in thought. A long while later, he indifferently said, "Although this hasn't dispelled all of my doubts, I've reached a general understanding. However, there is something I wish to ask fellow Taoist Silvermoon. What do you plan on doing with that body?" Silvermoon revealed a mysterious smile and chuckled before asking, "Would fellow Taoist kill me if I told you that I planned on cultivating with it?" Han Li didn't directly respond to her question and responded with raised eyebrows. "From the techniques and abilities that you displayed today as well as during that time in Heaven Void Hall, it seemed that you deliberately allowed me to acquire the Jade Scepter. Is that right?" Silverwolf felt somewhat stunned by his question, and she smiled with luminous eyes. "As the Jade Scepter's tool spirit, I didn't have much of a chance to leave Heaven Void Hall by myself. I needed a cultivator to bring me out. On that day, I didn't use my full abilities to resist capture, and with my cultivation greatly reduced after breaking free from the Heaven Void Cauldron, my full resistance wouldn't have been able to stop a nascent soul cultivator. In the end, it would have been better for me to fall into the hands of a core formation cultivator instead." After muttering to himself for a moment, Han Li asked with a deep voice, "That day, I wasn't the only core formation cultivator there. Why didn't you fall into the hands of the other two? Did you choose me?" Silvermoon's expression stirred and asked, "You mean the youth surnamed Wu and the ghost Dao cultivator that planned on killing you for the Heaven Void Cauldron?" "That's right." Silvermoon pursed her lips and sweetly smiled. "I simply found them undesirable. One was eerie and filled with ghost chi and the other shriveled and hideous. Although you aren't a majestic figure, you could be considered somewhat pleasing to the eye. Do you find these reasons acceptable?" She seemed both earnest and joking as she said this. And Li found himself overwhelmed with a feeling of not knowing whether he should laugh or cry. "Since fellow Taoist is unwilling to speak of it, I won't press you since I have a more important question to ask. Have you been able to observe my actions over the years from within my storage pouch?" Han Li's question was spoken with an icy tone, causing the temperature in the room to instantly drop. Her smile vanished and she seriously responded, "That's right. Regardless of whether it is Brother Han's techniques or magic treasures, I have been able to observe everything. I even know of the small, heaven-defying bottle of yours." Although he had faintly guessed as much, Han Li's expression instantly grew gloomy upon hearing her. He icily glanced at the young woman in silence as if he were thinking of a countermeasure. Silvermoon ignored Han Li's icy expression and asked with a weak smile, "Could it be that fellow Taoist Han plans on killing me? After all, if any of the cultivator clans were to know that such a heaven-defying treasure were to exist, Brother Han would surely meet a miserable end." When Han Li heard her, his eyes narrowed and his gaze became sharp as a blade's edge. With a hostile expression, Han Li chillingly said, "Since fellow Taoist Silvermoon is fully aware of this and dares to brazenly mention it, are you not afraid that I will destroy your linked treasure? If you were to perish, there wouldn't be any leaked secrets. Or do you believe that I wouldn't be able to kill you?" Silvermoon shook her head and serenely said, With your current abilities and magic treasures along with my unfamiliarity with this body, it is unlikely that I could prove to be your opponent. And after seizing this body through soul devouring, my cultivation greatly decreased. If we were to fight, I'd only have a 30% chance of victory if I'm being generous. Besides, my house treasure is in your hands. I could disappear as soon as you willed it. And Lee coldly snorted, but the young woman continued her explanation without a care. I'm very much satisfied that fellow Taoist Han has been able to tolerate me this far without killing me. While you can't be considered a chivalrous hero, you are still clearly someone who understands debts of gratitude. If I hadn't taken action to block the demon fox's attack, Brother Han probably wouldn't have given me the opportunity to speak so much rubbish. Han Li didn't deny her, instead calmly admitting, even if I give you the opportunity, if you aren't able to convince me, I will still take action. I cannot allow any knowledge of the bottle to escape. Silvermoon explained with an appreciative expression. That's fine. Brother Han's words are still in line with my predictions. If fellow Taoist Han were not ruthless and decisive, he wouldn't have made it this far on the path of cultivation, and I definitely wouldn't have saved you. After all, I don't wish to be immediately discarded after recognizing a master. Han Li was stunned for a moment before he sneered and said, recognizing a master? What is that supposed to mean? Do you really believe that I'd release you over a few words? The woman's eyes brightly stirred as she further explained. Of course it isn't such a simple matter. According to my knowledge, your set of bamboo cloudswarm swords has no artifact spirit. I'm capable of shifting my main soul from the Jade scepter over to your bamboo cloudswarm swords for the time being. With this, your flying swords would become far stronger, and you could end my life with a single thought. This should be enough for you to release me. After all, as your artifact spirit, you'll be able to sense if I have even the slightest malice towards you. Also, since my flesh body cannot be separated too far away from my main soul, there will be no fear of me abandoning you. Han Li frowned and deliberated for a long while before nonchalantly asking, can artifact spirits change their main bodies? If that is possible, then why are you willing to become my artifact spirit? Don't tell me that this is just because you're grateful that I've taken you out of Heaven Void Hall. The young woman sighed and slowly said, other artifact spirits possess no awareness and are naturally incapable of changing their housed treasure. However, I am different. So long as we are both willing, I am completely capable of doing this. Naturally, if I am to change my housed treasure, I will certainly feel immense pain, but that cannot be helped. As for my intentions, I naturally don't wish to be an artifact spirit for eternity. Don't think my views to be contradictory. I'm only willing to become your artifact spirit now, so that I may acquire true freedom in the future. Han Li's heart stirred and his expression grew lax. Could you speak of that in more detail? I'm not too sure of the specifics, but my scattered memories tell me that if I cultivate a secret technique, and my housed treasure's master reaches the legendary deity transformation stage, then I will acquire my freedom in the instant they ascend to the next realm. But before that happens, I will still be under your control. If you were to die for any reason before then, I will have to find another cultivator. From the way I see it, with your precious small bottle, you are the most likely cultivator to fulfill my wishes. That is why I was willing to take the initiative to offer to become your artifact spirit. And Li's expression wavered upon hearing this. After letting out a long sigh, he said, regardless of whether or not you're telling the truth, I truly have no method of controlling you other than this. And since you've taken the initiative to become my artifact spirit, I cannot reject you. However, I will have to place a temporary restriction on your body for the time being. After all, suddenly shifting an artifact spirit isn't something that can be done all at once. I must first prepare myself. Oh right, how far away can you be from your housed treasure while in that body? Silvermoon appeared happy that Han Li had agreed to her request. She obediently replied, currently, I must be within 50 kilometers of you. But soon, this demon fox's cultivation will increase and so should the range. Han Li closely pursued this matter with a cautious expression. What will happen if you exceed this range? If the range is exceeded, my soul will be beckoned by the housed treasure, and I will be called back. However, fellow Taoists need not worry about inconveniencing me. I know a secret technique that allows my body to be safely sealed within a spirit beast pouch. So long as you cultivate the technique and give the order, I can leave and enter the spirit beast pouch at will. As for when you confront an enemy, I can appear as your artifact spirit or even as the fox in accordance to the situation. And Li appeared satisfied by Silvermoon's answer and nodded his head. Good. Since that's the case, I'll first. Silvermoon's expression changed as she suddenly interrupted him. Not good, my spiritual power is exhausted. I cannot continue to maintain this body. In a pulse of silver light, her body shrank before Han Li's eyes, turning back into a small white fox. It was currently wrapped around Han Li's rather large clothes. When Han Li saw this, he couldn't help but bitterly laugh. He then formed an incantation gesture without any hesitation and shot several streaks of azure light into the white fox's body, placing it underneath his restrictions. Han Li then lifted the white fox by its nape and said, "Once we head out, I will hand you over to the drifting cloud disciples for the time being. Then after we part, slip away on your own. It should be extremely easy for you to slip away from a couple of chi condensation cultivators. I'll be waiting for you along the way." "All right, I'll do as you said, but how will Brother Han handle this cadaver demon?" The white fox spoke to Han Li through a voice transmission. Han Li took a look at the green-haired cadaver demon and casually said, "First, I'll see whether or not the gold-devouring beetles can destroy it. If that isn't possible, then there is nothing that can be done. We'll just leave it alone. Besides, regardless of the outcome, I'll be taking the Jade box that has its main soul. It won't be able to cause any major problems later on." He then slapped his waist and launched the spirit beast pouch into the air, releasing countless black-tainted gold-devouring beetles to surround the cadaver demon. Sounds of the beetles gnawing spread throughout the room, but soon, Han Li saw a portion of the gold-devouring beetles suddenly fall onto their backs and die. Their tricolored shell turned dark green in an instant. "What fearsome poison," Han Li muttered with a faint scowl. After a moment of hesitation, he had the flying beetles return to his spirit beast pouch. The white fox pondered for a long moment and said, "The cadaver demon's rotting poison might not be among the 10 deadliest poisons in the land, but it isn't something that your incomplete gold-devouring beetles are capable of enduring." Han Li snorted and frowned as he coldly glanced at the cadaver demon. The monster's body was extremely durable, far beyond that of the venomous flood dragon. He reckoned that if he were to destroy the cadaver demon, it would cause a majority of his black-tainted gold-devouring beetles to perish. There was no way Han Li would suffer such a loss over a fruitless matter. "Let's go," Han Li spoke without the slightest hesitation. The white fox nodded her head and said, "That does seem to be the only choice. Perhaps there will be a later use for the cadaver demon." With that said, a strange light glowed from the white fox and a yellow wolf head emerged from its body. As soon as the yellow wolf appeared, it opened its mouth wide and enveloped them both in yellow light. Afterwards, Han Li and the white fox disappeared from the room. Senior Marshal Brother Wang and the other 3 chi condensation cultivators were anxiously standing outside of the cliff. With none of them capable of using earth movement techniques, they could only wait for Han Li to return. Kui Huan grew impatient and asked, "Senior Marshal Brother, do you think Junior Marshal Brother Han succeeded?" When the other two heard him, they attentively looked at Senior Marshal Brother Wang. He wryly smiled and said, "It's hard to say. With Junior Marshal Brother Han's 10th layer cultivation, it shouldn't have been easy for him to chase after the demon fox. However, Junior Marshal Brother Han does possess an impressive magic tool. Perhaps he'll be able to give us a pleasant surprise, but either result shouldn't come as a shock." When the other 3 heard this, they couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. The short, stout youth sighed and shook his injured hand. When he thought to say something further, a yellow light suddenly flashed from the cliff to reveal Han Li with a small fox in his grasp. "Junior Marshal Brother Han, you truly managed to capture the fox." All 4 of the cultivators began to speak with expressions of excitement. Han Li chuckled and said, "It wasn't much. The fox was quite cunning and circled several times within the mountain. Had it not exhausted its spiritual power, I fear I wouldn't have been able to capture it so quickly." He then tossed the white fox towards Kui Huan. Kui Huan was stunned for a moment before excitedly catching it. The short, stout youth hurriedly warned, "Junior Marshal Brother Kui, be careful. Don't let it run away." Kui Huan lifted the white fox and replied, "Don't worry, I'll be very careful." Afterwards, he slapped his storage pouch and took out a dark green bag before quickly slipping the small fox inside. Kui Huan quickly tied the pouch closed and proudly said, "Hee, how will you escape from this pouch, little fox?" Han Li took a look at the small pouch, but after seeing that it was only a low-grade spirit tool, he paid it no further heed. Senior Marshal Brother Wang didn't pay any further attention to the small fox in the pouch. He instead faced Han Li and cordially said, "We were only able to capture the demon fox in great thanks to Junior Marshal Brother Han. Since we aren't an unscrupulous sort, we'll give Junior Brother Han a third of whatever the fox will fetch us. As for the rest, we'll split it evenly among us 4. How does that sound?" Han Li smiled in response. From Senior Marshal Brother Wang's skilled display, it seemed he truly wished to form a relationship with Han Li. As a result, Han Li nodded his head and agreed without any reservations. Since Brother Wang has made up his mind, I have no complaints. Although the other three felt somewhat reluctant to receive fewer spirit stones, they all knew that if it weren't for Han Li's assistance, they would have ended up wasting their efforts. As such, no one raised any objections. In the following moments, Han Li shared a few pleasantries with the others before excusing himself on the pretenses of having a pressing matter at hand. With Han Li heading back to the sect, the other four decided to strike, while the iron was hot, and head straight to the market city at the center of the Dreamcloud Mountains. Since that was where the disciples of the three sects mingled the most, they reckoned they would fetch the highest price for the Snowcloud Fox there. The four then departed from the marsh in high spirits. And Li didn't travel far before casually finding a small mountain nearby. He dropped down and sat cross-legged on a flat rock before closing his eyes. He had the Jade scepter on hand, allowing the white fox to find him when the time came. About an hour later, Han Li's expression stirred and he opened his eyes. At nearly the same time, a yellow light emerged from the earth revealing the white fox. Han Li looked at the white fox and indifferently said, "Well, aren't you fast?" The white fox raised its head and chuckled. "It isn't that I'm fast. It's just that they underestimated me by using a low-grade spirit tool to contain me. I fear they still haven't discovered that I've disappeared." Han Li expressionlessly said, "But now those drifting cloud sect disciples will have made a wasted effort. When the time comes, I should give them a bit of compensation." The white fox shook its head and said, "If that's the case, they will have profited from this disaster. All right, let's cut the rubbish. Shrink yourself and hide in my sleeve for the time being. We're going to return." Han Li then shook his sleeve. When the white fox heard him, she wordlessly shrunk herself in a glimmer of silver light and flew into Han Li's sleeve as a white blur. Because of the restrictions that Han Li had placed on the white fox's body, he had no fear of any sinister designs the white fox may hold, allowing him to confidently fly back. Instead of returning to his cave residence, he first dropped down into the market city at the main mountain of the drifting cloud sect. They should have the materials he needed to shift the housing of the artifact spirit. He needed to hurry up and make preparations for his return. Each passing day that Silver Moon remained as a loose artifact spirit was a day that he felt uneasy. Han Li was able to purchase the ingredients without problem. He easily found a store dealing with materials and purchased them all in one go. Although these materials were uncommon, they weren't particularly rare or precious. As a result, no one has asked him what he was using them for. With both the materials and white fox on hand, Han Li flew back to the medicine garden with satisfaction. But just as he arrived at the medicine garden, there were two people standing outside the restrictions. One of them was Kui Huan, who was sighing with an appearance of nervousness. The other person was a sullen-faced senior marshal Brother Wang. When Han Li saw them, he inwardly sighed. He obviously knew why they were here. However, Han Li landed near them with an expression of ignorance. When they saw that Han Li had returned, they glanced at each other and wore embarrassed expressions. Han Li stepped forward and calmly asked, "Fellow Taoists, why have you returned so quickly? Have you already sold the Snowcloud Fox?" After a moment of hesitation, Senior Marshal Brother Wang wryly smiled and said, I'm afraid we've let Brother Han down." Han Li stroked his chin and asked, "Oh, what happened? Was there an incident with the Snowcloud Fox?" Kui Huan opened his eyes wide and bewilderedly asked, "Junior Marshal Brother Han, how did you know?" Han Li faintly smiled when he heard Kui Huan and calmly said, "The only thing that we have together is a business interest in the demon fox. What else would bring you here?" When Kui Huan heard this, he opened his mouth but was left at a loss for words. At his side, Senior Marshal Brother Wang sighed and said, "Junior Marshal Brother Han is clearly an intelligent person. It is true that something has gone wrong with the Snowcloud Fox. We wish to sell the demon fox as soon as possible and headed straight to a market city when we departed. But not long after we left, I grew somewhat ill at ease and had Junior Marshal Brother Kui open the bag to let me examine the fox. As a result..." With that said, Senior Marshal Brother Wang paused, revealing a strange expression. Vexed, Kui Huan hurriedly finished for him. "As a result, we discovered that the demon fox had somehow managed to escape without a trace. It was truly inconceivable. It disappeared without a trace." Han Li frowned as if he was wondering about the truth behind those words. When Senior Marshal Brother Wang saw Han Li's expression, he inwardly cursed without end. Although Han Li's cultivation wasn't high, he was skilled in talisman refinement and possessed a powerful magic tool. With that in mind, Senior Marshal Brother Wang had planned on properly forming a relationship with him. However, he didn't anticipate such an embarrassing affair to occur before he could formally establish a friendship. It would be fine if he were wealthy. He'd be able to easily solve this by just using his own spirit stones and leave a good impression with Han Li. But as it so happened, he along with his fellow group members were lacking spirit stones, making it extremely difficult to win Han Li over. With that thought, Senior Marshal Brother Wang forcefully mustered himself out of his dejection, saying, "I know that this matter is hard to believe, but it really did happen. Regardless of how it's said, Junior Marshal Brother did personally hand over the demon fox to us, but now I must take responsibility for its disappearance. I've already sent my Junior Marshal Brothers to sell off the Huanging to repay the spirit stones we borrowed from you, and we'll have that for you soon. As for Junior Marshal Brothers' rightful share of spirit stones, we will make up for it as soon as we can." Just as soon as Qi Huan heard this, his expression changed and he nervously said, "Senior Marshal Brother, that is no small sum of spirit stones. Even if we were to pool together all we have, it would take at least 3 years to gather together that many spirit stones. It will slow down our cultivation if we cannot purchase any medicine pills during that time." Senior Marshal Brother Wang shook his head and was about to say something when Han Li interrupted him with a smile. "There is no need for Senior Marshal Brother to be like this. I believe you. The Snowcloud Fox was rather proficient in movement techniques, so it's no surprise that it was able to escape from the leather bag magic tool. I had originally thought to give a word of warning to Brother Qi, but at the time, I found it to be somewhat inappropriate and stayed quiet. As for my share of the spirit stones, let's just drop it. It'll be fine if you just return the spirit stones that you borrowed. With that, I won't consider myself to have suffered a loss." And Qi Huan heard that he didn't have to give any spirit stones. He was greatly delighted and slapped his hands together, saying, "I knew that Junior Marshal Brother Han was a magnanimous person. Although it was our fault, we truly don't possess the spirit stones to compensate you. And with Junior Marshal Brother's wealth, he shouldn't mind such a small amount too greatly. Qi Huan will always look upon you as a friend." When Senior Marshal Brother Wang heard Han Li, he revealed some hesitation. A moment later, he helplessly smiled and said, "On behalf of my Junior Marshal Brothers, I accept Junior Marshal Brother Han's generosity despite our shameful display. If you ever require any assistance in the future, please don't hesitate to find us. So long as it is possible, I will not refuse you." Senior Marshal Brother Wang felt that while Han Li's words were polite, he feared that Han Li harbored different thoughts entirely. As a result, he strived his hardest to choose his words carefully to leave behind the best impression possible. Having said that, he then particularly paid attention to Han Li's expression. However, Senior Marshal Brother Wang inwardly frowned, since he wasn't able to make out any of Han Li's emotions. The three had a chat outside the garden, but soon the other 2 Qi condensation cultivators in their party arrived with the spirit stones they had acquired from reselling the Huanging. Han Li received the pouch of spirit stones and casually swept his spiritual sense through it before calmly putting it away. After seeing Han Li receive the spirit stones, Senior Marshal Brother Wang suddenly recalled something and asked, "Ah, that's right. Junior Marshal Brother's magic tool is rather impressive. Will you be taking part in the sword trial assembly later this year?" Han Li couldn't help but reply with an odd expression, "The sword trial assembly? What, does Junior Marshal Brother Han not know of it?" Not only was Senior Marshal Brother Wang surprised, but the other 3 seemed to find this hard to believe as well. Han Li inwardly muttered to himself and calmly replied, "Is it strange that I don't know of it?" Qi Huan blinked and suddenly recalled something. "Of course it is. Oh, that's right. This is Junior Marshal Brother's first year in the sect, and he was staying in the medicine garden all this time. It makes sense that you don't know of the sword trial assembly." When the others heard this, they glanced at one another and nodded their heads, accepting this as the truth. Senior Marshal Brother Wang wore a strange expression and said, "We were greatly shocked when we heard that Junior Marshal Brother Han didn't know about the sword trial assembly. After all, it is starting soon, and all disciples within the sect are talking about, even the external affair disciples. Those that wish to prove their mettle are eagerly waiting in anticipation." The short, stout youth glanced at Senior Marshal Brother Wang with admiration and said, "With that said, the only one in our group to participate in the contest of might will be Senior Marshal Brother Wang. However, It is a pity that while Senior Martial Brother may prevail against external affair disciples, he will eventually be defeated when facing inner sect disciples. But even with this, Senior Martial Brother should still receive a mid-grade magic tool as a reward. When Han Li heard this, he wore a curious expression and said, "Oh, so it is a contest of superiority within the sect. It seems that it is quite unordinary. Could Senior Martial Brother explain a few of the finer details?" Senior Martial Brother Wang glanced at Han Li and slowly said, "Of course. The Sword Trial Assembly is actually for showing off newly joined disciples, regardless of one's identity. So long as they are a newly accepted disciple that isn't over the age of 30, one can participate. As for you, Junior Martial Brother Han, you still appear to be in your mid-20s and you've just entered the sect. You happen to meet the requirements." Han Li rubbed his chin and slowly said, "Is that so? It seems that there aren't many disciples that can partake in the contest." Junior Martial Brother's words hold somewhat true, but the Sword Trial Assembly actually has much to do with a sacred tree that the three sects are overseeing. A sacred tree. When Han Li heard this, he was stunned and realized that they were talking about Dreamcloud Mountain's Spirit Well tree. His initially careless expression was quickly replaced with a solemn one. Han Li seriously asked, "What does the Sword Trial Assembly have to do with the sacred tree?" The Sword Trial Assembly takes place several days before Sacred Tree starts to shed wine nectar. The three sects use this competition to decide who receives half of the shedded wine nectar, leaving the remaining half to be split between the two other sects. As a result, while this assembly can only be participated by young, new disciples, it is viewed with great importance among the three sects. If one achieves great merits in the assembly, one will attract the attention of the sect elders and acquire countless benefits. Senior Martial Brother Wang sighed and paused for a moment before solemnly continuing. Of course, beside those benefits, one is also heavily rewarded at the end for how many other disciples they are able to suppress. Not only were many disciples rewarded with top-grade magic tools in the past, there were also a few disciples that were rewarded with a spirit tempering pill. Although this medicine pill isn't very useful for low-grade disciples, there are many core formation experts that are more than willing to exchange them for at least 4 top-grade magic tools. However, this assembly has almost always been dominated by the Ancient Sword Sect, leaving our sect and the 100 Possibilities Sect to take second and third place. However, this comes as no surprise. With their incisive magic tools and techniques, the disciples of the Ancient Sword Sect make for incredibly difficult opponents for cultivators of the same grade. Senior Martial Brother Wang's final words seemed to be full of both admiration and complaints. Han Li frowned and asked, "By low-grade disciples, do you mean that both Qi Condensation and Foundation Establishment disciples will be participating?" Senior Martial Brother Wang nodded his head. "That's right. The Sword Trial Assembly doesn't differentiate between Qi Condensation cultivators and Foundation Establishment cultivators. They are all lumped together in the competition." Han Li said with a doubtful tone, "Then isn't it unfair towards Qi Condensation cultivators?" Senior Martial Brother Wang slightly smiled and spoke with a deep tone. The Sword Trial Assembly was originally meant to compare the cultivation of the Foundation Establishment disciples between sects. Qi Condensation cultivators are only secondary. However, in order to encourage enthusiasm among low-grade disciples, they didn't restrict external affair disciples from participating. Although Qi Condensation cultivators have never been able to seize first place, there have been Qi Condensation cultivators that were able to defeat Foundation Establishment cultivators and force their way into the top 10. Qi Condensation cultivators forcing their way into the top 10. Could it be that their magic tools are immensely powerful? Huan shook his head and said, Junior Martial Brother is truly smart. He already knew the crux of the matter without being told. The core formation seniors of the sects all have their own descendants, and occasionally give them a few greatly powerful magic tools so that they may acquire a high rank. As such, it is no surprise that these Qi Condensation disciples would be able to overcome a Foundation Establishment cultivator with an unwieldy magic tool. With that said, the doubt on Han Li's face only grew deeper. After a moment of thought he said, "From what you've said, there should be more rewards than just that for the top ranking. There would be no way that this much effort would be put into the contest for only magic tools." Senior Martial Brother Wang slowly said, "Even if Junior Martial Brother didn't mention it, I would have said it anyways. In fact, the Sword Trial Assembly's most attractive reward is the opportunity to cleanse one's eyes in spirit water if one places in the top 10. It is said that the first drop that is shed each time from the holy tree is particularly valuable and can be concocted into the legendary brightsite water. Although one's cultivation won't increase from using the water, it grants the fantastical ability to see through mist and stone. This is the reason why there are so many that strive their hardest to make it into the top 10. If there were only a few top-grade magic tools as a prize, there would be little attraction for the disciples of sect elders of large clans. After all, while the spirit tempering pill is a precious prize, there is only one of them. Han Li raised his brow and muttered, "Brightsite water." The name of this spirit water was something that Han Li had seen in many records. However, he wholly didn't expect for the three sects of Dreamcloud Mountain to actually be capable of refining it. It made even him feel tempted. With a dreamy tone, Hui Huan added, "Not to mention the first drop of the sacred tree, but even the other materials used to create the brightsite water are all extremely rare. It is said that it uses several kinds of thousand-year spirit medicine. If it weren't for the fact that brightsite water is only effective on qi condensation and foundation establishment cultivators, the seniors of the sect would have been reluctant to place it as a reward." With this, Han Li had acquired a rough understanding of the sword trial assembly. Once he acquired a few of the finer details, he planned on personally participating. After all, since this matter involved both a spirit tempering pill and brightsite water, Han Li couldn't possibly let this opportunity go. After that, the four chattered a bit more about the sword trial assembly with Han Li before taking their leave. Han Li watched them go on their flying magic tools until they became black specks in the sky. He then stood in place and began to ponder with a serious expression. The white fox's soft voice suddenly spoke from his cuff. "What? Is Brother Han tempted? Do you have eyes on the spirit tempering pill or the brightsite water?" Han Li raised his head and bluntly replied, "Don't tell me I can't go after both." He shook his sleeve and had the fox jump out. The white fox quickly regained its original size and raised its head. It softly chuckled, "Fellow Taoist Han is truly greedy. However, this is fine too. Regardless of whether it is the spirit tempering pill or the brightsite water, they will prove to be rather practical. If you were to miss this opportunity, they would become quite difficult to acquire. I am well aware. For now, come back with me to my cave residence. I'll deal with your matter first and leave the deliberations for the sword trial assembly for later," Han Li said with a sullen voice. He then turned around and headed towards his cave residence. The white fox's eyes revealed anticipation, and she wordlessly followed after him. Once Han Li entered the cave residence, he immediately started having the artifact spirit transfer onto his bamboo cloudswarm swords. Han Li grew faintly excited at prospect of his magic treasures growing in power with the addition of an artifact spirit. Originally, there was an extremely small chance for a magic treasure to take in an artifact spirit, as the demon beast's soul would do its utmost to resist. But with Silvermoon taking the initiative to enter Han Li's magic treasure, there wouldn't be much of a problem. He had also assumed that moving Silvermoon's main soul from the Jade scepter would prove to be a troublesome task. However, she seemed to be quite confident and certain, stating that she could handle the preparations all by herself. When Han Li heard this, he felt slightly less tense and drew a strange spell formation in a quiet room in accordance to the white fox's instructions. He then placed the Jade scepter and the white fox into the formation before leaving. The silent room was under the effects of a soundproofing restriction. If there were any sounds produced from Silvermoon's separation from the Jade scepter, Han Li would be completely ignorant, nor did he plan on prying. He knew he had no part to play in moving her soul. Han Li didn't remain idle after that. He walked into a neighboring quiet room and began his own preparations for accepting an artifact spirit into his magic treasure. Half a day later, Han Li had finished his preparations and headed towards Silvermoon's room, feeling that it was about time to start. But once he entered her room, Han Li's expression stirred. The Jade Scepter and the White Fox were properly sitting inside the room's spell formation as he had expected, but the Jade Scepter's radiance had greatly dimmed, and the White Fox's fur had grown into a damp and disorderly mess. The fox's eyes were also filled with exhaustion. When Silvermoon saw that Han Li had entered, she neither moved nor spoke, as if she lacked the energy for either. Han Li's expression relaxed and he gently asked, "How did it go? Was it a success?" Silvermoon strenuously said, "Although it was painful enough to kill me, I was able to endure. It seems the preparations on your end are done. Since I have no host artifact, I cannot stay in the White Fox's body much longer. I need to join together with your magic treasure immediately, otherwise my soul will scatter." Han Li nodded his head and picked up the white fox without any hesitation. He then brought it into the neighboring room. Once Han Li entered, he sealed the room and silence once again took the residence. 3 days later, a sound transmission talisman burst into flames outside the medicine garden's restrictions and entered the mist, quickly disappearing from sight. 2 hours later, the mist flashed with azure light to reveal Han Li. He raised his head to look at the sky and rubbed his chin, before releasing a flying sword magic tool and heading straight towards Dayspring Mountain. Silvermoon's smooth voice suddenly appeared within Han Li's head. "Brother Han, from the message it seems that there is a gathering of disciples from Dayspring Mountain. Could it be related to the Sword Trial Assembly?" Han Li calmly replied with his spiritual sense, "I'm not sure. But since even someone as out of the way as I received a summons from the Mountain Lord, even if it isn't related to the Sword Trial Assembly, this matter must be important." Silvermoon softly reminded, "While it would be extremely easy for Brother Han to place first in the competition, even if he doesn't reveal his true cultivation, that would certainly attract much attention, perhaps even from the 3 sects, nascent soul cultivators. If that occurs, it is likely the losses would outweigh the gains." Han Li expressionlessly replied, "I'm fully aware. When did I say that I'd participate in the assembly for certain? And even if I were to participate, there would be no way that I'd place first. I won't do anything to attract too much attention before I condense a nascent soul." Silvermoon chuckled, "It seems I've said too much. With Brother Han's rich experience with hardship, there is naturally no need for me to remind you of such a trivial matter as this." Although this was only her voice, it contained a strong charm. When Han Li felt this, he couldn't help but sigh. Although Silvermoon called herself a wolf, he couldn't help but feel that she more closely resembled a fox, given her graceful allure. Furthermore, it seemed that she knew that after becoming his artifact spirit, Han Li wouldn't do anything to her. While it was fortunate that Silvermoon wholeheartedly cultivated while possessing the fox form, once she possessed Han Li's flying swords as an artifact spirit, she incessantly spoke with him. It appeared that the Jade Scepter had been quite a lonely place, and she was now venting her feelings. This caused quite the headache for Han Li. Luckily, he had always found her voice to be gentle and pleasant to the ear. There was even a chance that her temperament would gradually become more mellow as time went by. As Han Li remained silent, Silvermoon asked yet another question. "I never clearly understood why Brother Han wishes to acquire the Brightsite water, even though it has no effect on cultivators beyond Foundation establishment stage." When Han Li heard this, he faintly smirked and said, "The Hidden Sword Mountain cultivators were mistaken. It isn't that the Brightsite water has no effect on high-grade cultivators. It's that high-grade cultivators have already cleansed their body's essence upon forming their core. Their eyes can already see through simple illusion techniques and dense fog, so there isn't much to be gained from cleansing them such a small amount. Since the amount of spirit water wouldn't be enough to be effective for a high-grade cultivator, it's better for a low-grade cultivator to use it." Silvermoon yelped in surprise, "Yi, how does Brother Han know about this?" "When I was originally in the scattered star seas, I read it in an ancient book. It shouldn't be false." "Could it be that Brother Han has a plan in mind?" "That's right. I plan on using this opportunity to draw close to the spirit well tree and see whether or not I can take some of its roots. I'll be able to mature the roots with my small bottle if I get a hold of them and could acquire countless spirit tempering pills and limitless Brightsite water. Of course, I'll have to acquire the recipes some other way." Brother Han's methods are truly long-sighted. In that case, you'll only need to place in the top 10. Although it will be quite attention-grabbing, it will be far safer than placing first." Han Li smiled and thought to say something else when he swept his gaze across and unconsciously gasped as he slowed to a stop. In the distance, he spotted a red streak of light that enveloped a beautiful woman with an expression as cold as frost. It was the woman surnamed Mew who had assigned him to the medicine garden. When the woman drew closer and spotted Han Li, she also wore an expression of surprise. She soon slowed down and stopped at Han Li's side. "Did you also receive a message to go to Dayspring Mountain?" the woman indifferently said. Han Li replied with a calm expression, "I did, Martial Aunt Mew. Would Martial Aunt happen to know what happened or why the Mountain Lord has summoned all of us disciples?" "I don't know, but it should be related to the Sword Trial Assembly," Mew paling curtly replied. Afterwards, she glanced at the flying sword beneath Han Li and frowned. "Although your magic tool is high grade, it isn't specialized for flight. How about I use the Daystar belt to bring you along? It will save time." With that said, the woman enveloped Han Li in the magic tool's red light without even waiting for his reply. Han Li was initially surprised, but he had no intention of refusing her offer. As such, he was drawn into her magic tool's red light and was brought along. As they flew, the woman swept her gaze over Han Li and expressionlessly said, "Did you cultivate the profound ice arts that I gave you? Although cultivating this technique won't greatly increase your base cultivation, it will allow you to use powerful water attribute magic techniques. If you reach foundation establishment, you'll be able to smoothly switch the cultivation art to your main cultivation art without any harm." Having heard that, Han Li found it difficult to respond. If he said that he had already cultivated it somewhat and she wished to see, he shouldn't have any problems mimicking a few of its water attribute techniques. Fortunately, this woman merely raised the question in passing and didn't continue speaking. Silvermoon knew that this wasn't the time to talk to Han Li and stayed quiet in the presence of Mu Paling. As the two were about to draw closer to Dayspring Mountain, Mu Paling's expression stirred as she looked upward. A moment later, a streak of green light flew down from the sky, blocking the woman's path forward and causing them to stop. "Junior Marshal Sister Mu, I haven't seen you in quite a while. Have you been busy recently? I've sent you quite a few sound transmission talismans, but I haven't received a single response." Han Li revealed a flabbergasted expression. The green light had faded away to reveal a sharp-eared, thin-faced cultivator in his 30s. This was the cultivator surnamed Yan who had blocked Han Li's group when they were about to enter the sect. When the cold woman saw this person, she revealed surprise, but her expression soon grew sullen. "Yan, I am under orders of the Mountain Lord to assemble at the mountain. You dare to block me?" Junior Marshal Sister Mu's words are quite heavy. "How could I dare to block you? However, I merely wish to ask if you received the letters of my esteemed father. You see, the elders of our clans have already agreed to our wedding. We should discuss this in the coming days." The cultivator surnamed Yan's gaze wandered over the woman's ample body with desire as he spoke. However, when he spotted Han Li, his expression grew sullen. Woman surnamed Mu seemed to see through his wicked thoughts, and a trace of hostility appeared in her eyes. She scolded him with an expression like ice. "What's going through your mind? This is Marshal Nephew Han whom my master had given to me to instruct. There is nothing else between us. As for the matter of marriage, I naturally cannot oppose my clan's seniors. However, I will always be in control of when we pair cultivate if ever. Whenever your cultivation reaches my level, I might consider it. Otherwise, don't even think about laying a finger on me." This woman loathed Yan to the extreme and couldn't even put up a polite face. When cultivator Yan heard her, his face went through a series of red and white flushes. But just as he thought to say something, the woman had ran out of patience. With a cold snort, she propelled her magic tool with the entirety of her spiritual power, causing them to flying over Cultivator Yan in a large pulse of red light. Cultivator Yan was greatly flustered and thought to chase them, but after some further thought, he stayed in place with a trace of resentment. When Han Li turned around to glance at him, he saw an extremely bitter expression on Cultivator Yan's face. After a moment of hesitation, Han Li asked with an odd expression, "Marshal Aunt Mu, you're engaged to this man?" Cultivator Yan was only an early foundation establishment cultivator, but Mu Paling was already at mid-foundation establishment. Also, their appearances were as different as day and night as well. Han Li felt completely puzzled as to why this woman's clan had wed her to him. Although Han Li felt somewhat curious, he originally wished to leave this matter alone. From the woman's sulking expression, the subject seemed like something that should be ignored. But despite the possibility she would rebuke or ignore him, Han Li's curiosity won over and he asked anyways. "It is best if Marshal Nephew asks little of my matters." As soon as Han Li asked, she icily glared at him and replied without emotion. Of course, Han Li responded by shutting his mouth and revealing an embarrassed expression. However, at that same moment, Han Li faintly heard Silvermoon giggling inside his head for a moment. It was only a moment before they arrived at a large stage, the center of the mountain. A large hall of antique design was erected on the stage. The words "Heart Cleansing Hall" were written on the building's silver signboard. At that moment, the huge black wooden doors were tightly shut, and the many disciples of Dayspring Mountain were chatting amongst themselves as they gathered outside. There were about 600 disciples already densely packed outside of Heart Cleansing Hall. They were all whispering to one another in small groups. However, these people were all chi condensation cultivators. None of them were at foundation establishment. The cold woman circled once in the air before landing in front of the hall's gates. When the nearby cultivators spotted her, they all respectfully saluted her. The woman waved her hand and walked towards the hall without the slightest hesitation. Through some unknown method, she gently slapped the door and it opened a sliver. Just after she entered, the door closed once more. Han Li watched the woman disappear and shook his head, but when he thought to enter the crowd, the nearby cultivators gazed at him with strange looks. A few of the cultivators in the distance even began to point at him. Han Li rubbed his chin and swept his spiritual sense past the crowd of murmuring chi condensation cultivators. Who's that? What an unfamiliar face. Is he a new disciple? Why did he arrive with Martial Aunt Mew? Is he a relative of Martial Aunt Mew? Why else would he arrive together with her? Han Li clearly heard many suspicious and envious words from the crowd, and he inwardly sighed. Soon after, he stepped away from the hall's entrance and entered the crowd. Even within the crowd, Han Li could still feel plenty of gazes examining him. At that moment, Han Li heard a voice transmission with a straightforward tone. "Junior Martial Brother Han, I didn't think I'd see you again so soon." Han Li turned his head in surprise and spotted a large man standing about 10 meters behind him. He was Du Dong, the suspicious chi condensation cultivator that had entered Dayspring Mountain at the same time as him. He was currently calling out to Han Li with a wide smile. An odd expression flickered from Han Li's eyes, but he wore a smile and politely saluted him. So it turned out to be Senior Martial Brother Du. "Are you doing well with Martial Uncle Jiang?" Martial Uncle Jiang was the white-haired old man that Dong Du was assigned to. "Yes, I'm doing very well," the large man chuckled. He appeared to be a rather simple and honest character. Han Li inwardly sneered, but he maintained a polite exterior as they shared their experiences with each other from the past year. He heard that the white-haired old man believed that Du Dong was rather talented in refining talismans and wished to heavily nurture him. With that said, Du Dong wore a smile full of excitement. When Han Li heard him, he felt slight pity towards the white-haired old man. Du Dong wasn't someone who should be nurtured. The old man would likely be implicated in whatever plans this shady individual may have. Of course, Han Li had no intentions of warning Martial Uncle Jiang, and continued to intermittently chat with the large man. At that moment, the large man suddenly wore a mysterious expression and said, "Junior Martial Brother Han, did you know? Your mentor, Martial Aunt Mew, is the top beauty in Dayspring Mountain, and she is also among the top 3 beauties in the Drifting Cloud sect. You may have caused quite the uproar by arriving with her." "May have, I already did." Han Li bitterly laughed and glanced around with a trace of helplessness. Du Dong then changed the subject and casually asked, "Since you two arrived together, did Martial Aunt say anything regarding what this meeting is about?" "Oh, no, but it seems Senior Martial Brother Du heard something. Wouldn't it be better for you to tell me?" Han Li's calm expression was replaced with a mysterious smile as he deeply looked at Dong Du. Under Han Li's penetrating gaze, the large man's honest smile had frozen. Du Dong was left overwhelmed from a sensation of immense scrutiny, as if his secrets were laid bare. But soon Han Li turned his head, and this feeling disappeared as if it were merely a misperception. Regardless, the man was left bewildered, and he quickly bid his farewells before heading to meet with a group of acquainted Dayspring Mountain disciples, not daring to stay in Han Li's company. A slight sneer momentarily appeared on Han Li's face when he saw him walking away. At that moment, Silvermoon spoke within his mind, "Brother Han, did you deliberately scare him? I fear that he will later hold suspicion towards you. Won't he be a detriment?" Li responded using his spiritual sense, "I might not clearly know his identity, but I am certain that nothing good will come of him, so I made sure that he'd take the initiative to distance himself from me. If something major did happen, then I will avoid being implicated. As for any suspicion he might hold, how would that affect me? He would merely become more careful of me, and it's not like he could succeed in attacking me. I merely wish not to be associated with him. I have no intention of interfering with his plans." Silvermoon didn't reply, and it appeared that she recognized the reason in Han Li's words. In the end, if Du Dong maliciously conspired against the sect, anybody close to him would certainly come under the suspicious notice of the sect's upper echelon, something that Han Li would certainly wish to avoid. In the following moments, Han Li examined the crowd of disciples in solitude. There were disciples of both genders and of all ages. There were also those with cultivations that didn't match their age, such as young cultivators already at the peak of chi condensation. There were also a few gorgeous young women, but all of them had a group of similarly aged men at their side. It seems young, beautiful female cultivators were pursued the same way in every sect. Just as Han Li was lost in thought, the hall's gate eventually opened, and a dignified voice spoke out, leaving the Qi condensation disciples in silenced awe. All Dayspring Mountain disciples are to enter the hall. This faint man's voice belonged to the Dayspring Mountain Lord, the mid-core formation cultivator surnamed Xin that Han Li had met when he was assigned to the mountain. When the disciples outside the hall heard him, they all lowered their heads and respectfully said, "We sincerely accept martial ancestors' orders." Afterwards, the crowd immediately walked into the hall in two orderly lines. Because Han Li was among the last to enter, he saw that Du Dong was also among the last to enter the Cleansing Heart Hall. The area within the large hall was vast, spanning at least a kilometer wide with several tens of lofty pillars scattered throughout. Each of the pillars were embedded with smoothly carved moonlight stones, illuminating the hall with a faint white glow. The hall was entirely empty apart from the two thrones that were placed at the very front. Within these two chairs sat a white-robed man with a scholarly appearance, and a gray-clothed old man with fierce eyes and messy hair. In front of the two thrones stood 2 rows of over 10 foundation establishment cultivators. The elegant beauty surnamed Mu and the youth surnamed Yu that had led Han Li into the sect were both standing in the second row. As for the youth surnamed Miao that had questioned him when he had entered the sect, he was standing in the first row, looking just as sickly and pale as before. When the disciples entered the hall, they all simultaneously knelt and saluted the two sitting in the chairs. Disciples pay their respects to martial ancestor Xin and martial ancestor Yu. "That's enough, stand." The middle-aged man swept his arm with a smile and had the crowd of disciples stand. The Qi condensation disciples then split off into 2 rows and stood at each side of the hall. Han Li and Du Dong both happened to stand near the hall's entrance. Han Li swept his spiritual sense past the old man with the fierce expression and found that he was only an early core formation cultivator. He was the deputy mountain lord that he had heard of but haven't seen, Martial Uncle Yu. After Han Li inspected him, he recalled his spiritual sense from a lack of interest. In the next moment, Mountain Lord Xin began to slowly speak. "I'm sure you disciples already know why I've summoned you all here. Yesterday, our sect received an official letter from the Ancient Sword Sect. The next sword trial assembly will be held in a half-year's time. As we hosted the last competition, it is the 1,000 Possibilities Sect's turn to host it in the east of the Dreamcloud Mountains. In accordance to the usual practice, each of the 3 sects will send 30 disciples to participate in the sword trial assembly. The final 10 that remain in the competition will be heavily rewarded. As such, we must first select the best of our sect to participate." With that said, he paused for a moment before continuing. "Of course, each of the sect's 6 mountain lords will be able to nominate 1 person that will be able to participate in the sword trial assembly without measuring their skill. As for the other 24 slots, they will be vied for by the disciples that meet the requirements. These victorious disciples will then be advised by sect elders in the time remaining before the sword trial assembly. Yesterday, I had a meeting with the sect master and the other mountain lords where we decided that the sect's sword trial selection will take place in a month. But first, I must give an explanation of the 2 conditions required to participate for those that are unaware. Any participants must be less than 30 years old and possess a minimum cultivation at the 10th layer of Qi condensation, else they will be barred from joining. That is all. Now, if you meet the minimum conditions and wish to vie for a position, you have until the incense burns away to decide. Oh yes, the disciple that I and Deputy Mountain Lord Yun selected to participate without trial is your martial Aunt Mu. Junner, go ahead and light the incense." "As you bid, master." The youth surnamed Yu immediately stepped forward and swiftly took out a bronze cauldron from his storage pouch. He then set it at the center of the hall and placed a stick of incense in it. With a flash of light from his hand, fragrant smoke began to spiral towards the sky. While none dared to make a commotion, those who held the qualifications to participate became restless as they watched the incense stick burn. When the incense stick burned halfway, Silvermoon saw that Han Li wore an aloof expression and couldn't help but ask, "Will Brother Han be participating?" "Why wouldn't I? With the other disciples all stirring in excitement, it would draw quite a bit of attention if I didn't." With that said, Silvermoon grew silent. A short moment later, the incense stick had completely burned away, and the Mountain Lord opened his eyes. "Those that don't meet the conditions or are unwilling to join may now leave." "As you bid, martial ancestor." A majority of the present disciples then bowed and slowly left the hall. Apart from the Foundation establishment cultivators, there were only about 40 young disciples left in the room. When the middle-aged man examined the group, he nodded his head with satisfaction. Good, all the disciples present fulfill the conditions. I'm quite happy. Even if none of you are selected to participate, your horizons will be greatly widened as you fight against your martial brothers from the other mountains. It will provide great benefits to your future cultivation. Your martial uncle will now explain some important points about the competition. As for martial ancestor Yu and I, we have matters to attend to and will be departing first. With that said, Mountain Lord Xin and Deputy Mountain Lord Yun departed from the hall. With a sickly appearance, the youth surnamed Miao coughed several times before calmly speaking to the Qi condensation cultivators. Since the Mountain Lord has handed over this matter to me, please listen carefully, martial nephews. After all, this competition will be a test of skill against your fellow sect members, and there are things that must be avoided. First of all, vicious and deadly techniques and magic tools are disallowed in the contest. Otherwise, you will be expelled from the sect and will have your cultivation scattered. Also, a quarter-hour later, Han Li and the rest of the disciples in the hall walked out. Most of them flew off with expressions of excitement. Han Li glanced at their departing figures and shook his head before taking to the skies and flying back to his cave residence. The journey back was smooth and uneventful. Inside his cave residence, he began his preparations for the sect contest. Since he couldn't display too much power in his pursuit for one of the 24 positions, he had to make use of talismans and several magic tools that he hadn't touched in countless years. Top-grade magic tools were more than plentiful. He had plundered tens of them from the core formation cultivators that he had personally slain, but in order to draw less attention to himself, he had to carefully select only a few of them. And since he didn't intend on using these magic tools in the sect selection, he also began to refine large quantities of mid-level elementary talismans. He planned on using these talismans to crush his low-grade opponents in a single blow. Of course, he wouldn't be able to make it through on talismans alone. Han Li especially refreshed his knowledge on the flame-handling arts. He had acquired all those years ago from an old Taoist in the prince's mansion of the state of Yue. Although it wouldn't prove particularly useful to high-grade cultivators, it will prove more than effective in duping Qi condensation and Foundation establishment cultivators. When Han Li had first acquired the flame-handling arts all those years ago, he had gained many insights from it. But with his current cultivation as a late core formation cultivator, it had little value to him. As a result of only a few days of effort, he grasped the entirety of the methods of transforming flames. He had even acquired subtle understandings that exceeded what had been recorded in the flame-handling arts. For the rest of these days, Han Li wholeheartedly spent his time refining various talismans. During that time, his gold-silver-gold devouring beetles had already begun to cannibalize one another, much to his joy. He was sure that while the gold-devouring beetles were still far away from complete evolution, they were growing quite close to the legendary all-devouring stage. However, the weeping soul beast in the neighboring room was proving quite troublesome for Han Li. It had remained soundly asleep this entire time without any sign of awakening. Fortunately, with the weeping soul pearl refined within his body, he knew that there was nothing wrong with the beast. However, he couldn't help but feel worried. After all, it was taking too long to complete its transformation. A month later, the Drifting Cloud Sect's main mountain was bustling with exceptional liveliness. Cultivators began to unceasingly gather at the top of the mountain, with several thousands cultivators that came to observe the contest. It appeared everyone that was off duty had come. While they weren't participating in the battle, watching other cultivators battle in a contest of skill was a vastly enriching experience. The contest was being held on 3 large, flat stages near the top of the mountain. Each of the stages were surrounded by spell formations over 300 meters wide. They all raised a huge dome of light around the stage to prevent the spectators from receiving any injuries. There were 3 late Foundation establishment cultivators, acting as judges to prevent any deaths from occurring. The sect selection was now undergoing its 3rd day. The past 2 days had resulted in many cultivators being sadly defeated. In total, the selection contest was being conducted between 500 cultivators. Although there were 3 stages to conduct battles, this process would take many days given the large number of participants. That being said, the 40 cultivators of Dayspring Mountain had been among the smaller factions. They paled in comparison to the number from Firecloud Mountain, which had over 100 disciples participating. There were only 4 Foundation establishment cultivators in the contest, but they weren't required to fight until the final round. Although they weren't among those that were chosen by the Mountain Lords, they had still managed to reach Foundation establishment before the age of 30. Since they were undoubtedly talented individuals, they would be given a position with just a single victory against a chi condensation cultivator. At that moment, Han Li silently stood among several Dayspring Mountain cultivators. They were all watching a battle occur inside a light barrier between a cultivator of Dayspring Mountain and White Phoenix Mountain. White Phoenix was a peculiar existence amongst the 6 mountains. Not only did the mountain have 2 female core formation mountain lords, they primarily relied on female disciples. As a result, their mountain possessed few disciples, and only a dozen female cultivators were participating in the battle. The Dayspring Mountain disciple that was fighting appeared somewhat aged, but he was actually in his late 20s. Although he was an external affair disciple, he was born in a reputable cultivation clan in the state of Zai. That was why he possessed a high-grade magic tool of considerable power, a white gold dagger axe. Although the young female cultivator from White Phoenix Mountain was being pushed back, her eyes were full of hope. The Dayspring Mountain cultivators beside Han Li were clearly good friends with the male cultivator and cheered him on with excitement. But just as the man's white dagger axe was about to chop down, the woman raised her brow and shot a ball of azure light from her hand, blocking the white streak. The woman's body then blurred and she disappeared without a trace. When the man saw this, he hurriedly formed an incantation seal with his hands as his expression vastly changed. Just as he thought to force back the woman with a magic technique, a red mist suddenly enveloped him from behind. Then with a flop, the Dayspring Mountain disciple fell to the ground. The lanky cultivator that was floating above the stage announced, "White Phoenix Mountain's Jin Rong is victorious." When the female cultivator heard this, she respectfully saluted the judge and took out a small bottle from her storage pouch. After she placed it next to the nose of the unconscious cultivator, he began to slowly regain consciousness. Once he realized what had happened, the Dayspring Mountain cultivator walked from the stage with a deep red expression. Afterwards, the female cultivator flew out from the spell formation with a proud appearance. The nearby female cultivators immediately surrounded her and showered her with praise, attracting the attention of a few nearby male cultivators. Above the dome of light, the lanky cultivator expressionlessly announced, "The next battle will be between Dayspring Mountain's Han Li and Firecloud Mountain's Zun Tong." Although his voice wasn't loud, the nearby cultivators heard him clearly. When Han Li heard this, he smiled and slowly walked into the spell formation. Not long after, a handsome, white-clothed cultivator entered from the other side. As soon as this person entered, an uproar was raised amongst the nearby spectators. In Chapter 294, Han Li acquired an interesting book from an old chi condensation cultivator that was surprisingly useful. That's junior martial brother Zun. He just entered the sect a few years ago. It said that this junior martial brother possesses heavenly Xianxia veins. Is it true? Isn't the Zun clan a cultivation clan of great renown in our state of Su? Surely he must possess mighty magic tools. Who is this junior martial brother Han? I don't think I've seen him before. Did he just enter the sect? I got to say that Han Li is sure out of luck. He came across a fearsome opponent. Before the battle even started, Han Li could clearly hear a lively discussion coming from outside the stage's light barrier. Heavenly Xianxia veins. Han Li's expression slightly stirred upon hearing this and examined his opponent with interest. In addition to his handsome appearance and tall figure, his cultivation was quite decent at the 12th layer of chi condensation. Seeing that Han Li had an ordinary appearance and only possessed a cultivation at the 10th layer, a trace of disdain appeared on the white-clothed youth's face, but he still saluted him nevertheless. When Han Li saw this, he inwardly sneered and indifferently returned the salute with a faint smile. The white-clothed youth revealed a trace of anger at his casual response. At that moment, the lanky cultivator up above indifferently said, "Start the battle." As soon as this was said, the white-clothed youth wore a harsh expression and immediately formed an incantation seal with his hands. A flash of fiery light suddenly pulsed from his body, enveloping him in a barrier of scorching light. He then waved his hand and opened his fingers, revealing an egg-sized red ball that floated from his grasp. The white-clothed youth then started to mutter an incantation in preparation of attacking Han Li with the magic tool. When Han Li saw this, he felt a faint sense of familiarity with this method and couldn't help but feel surprised. At that moment, many yelps of astonishment came from the outside. "Quickly look, Junior Martial Brother Zun instantly enveloped himself in a fire attribute barrier without a talisman. He really does have heavenly Yangfer veins. What's that? That bead in his hand seems to be his clan's famed firewave bead. That youngster facing him is certain to lose. Perhaps the match will be decided in an instant. Han Li inwardly sneered and calmly waved his hand, taking out a stack of about 40 talismans from his storage pouch. He raised his head to look at the white-clothed youth, only to discover that the youth was completely focused on using his magic tool and was oblivious to Han Li's actions. It appeared he held absolute confidence in his barrier. Since this was the case, Han Li decided to cease any pleasantries and slapped his hands together. In a burst of red light, 40 fist-sized fireballs shot out from his hands in a dense barrage towards his opponent. The scene caused the spectators to shout in surprise. At that same moment, the firewave bead floating above the white-clothed cultivator's hand was set ablaze and was now ready to attack. But just as he was basking in his delight, he heard the spectators cry in surprise and couldn't help but raise his head in confusion. As a result, he caught sight of several tens of fireballs simultaneously striking his barrier. With a series of loud explosions and flashes of glaring red light, the youth's senses were overwhelmed. As for the light barrier surrounding him, it shattered in a pitiful display, lasting for only a moment. Roasting flames rushed towards him before his eyes and were one step away from completely enveloping him. Although this young talent was gifted with the heavenly Yangfer veins and had been meticulously nurtured by his sect elders, he now found himself on the verge of death. He cried out with a pale face and lost himself to fear, wanting to turn around and flee. But during this moment of peril, the youth felt his collar tighten and his body became lighter. He was immediately lifted in the air, and the wave of flames completely passed him by. Still in a panic, the white-clothed cultivator turned around to see the lanky judge grasping him by the collar. He indifferently muttered, "Dayspring Mountain's Han Li is victorious." At that moment, the white-clothed youth realized that he had already lost. His face then turned deathly pale after realizing that he had been easily defeated by talismans of the lowest grade. As for the many cultivators spectating, after recovering from their shock, they all looked at each other in dismay. They all knew that while the fireball talisman was the simplest low-grade elementary talisman, they each cost a spirit stone to purchase. However, Han Li had used 40 of these talismans in a single breath, equating to 40 spirit stones that had been thrown away in the fight. That was the price of a good, low-grade magic tool. This wasn't merely being loose with money. He was completely squandering it. Could it be that he planned on sparing none of his wealth in order to prevail in the selection? Underneath the peculiar gazes of the drifting cloud sect, Han Li saluted the lanky Foundation establishment cultivator and walked out of the light barrier with an unchanged expression. As for the white-clothed youth, he resentfully glared at Han Li as he departed, but underneath the cold watch of the lanky cultivator, he could only helplessly depart. With his first battle concluded, Han Li had no thoughts of observing others' battles and returned to his cave residence. 2 days later, the first round of the competition came to a close. There were many marvelous battles during the contest that were being enthusiastically discussed by the spectators. While Han Li's use of tens of fireball talismans had left many speechless, it had aroused much admiration as well. Many of the spectators believed Han Li to be a disciple of a large clan for him to be able to spend so many spirit stones. This had led to Han Li developing somewhat of a reputation among some of the spectating disciples. In the second round of the competition, Han Li was selected to fight in the afternoon of the first day. He arrived at the center of the stage with a calm expression. A few of the disciples that had watched Han Li's last battle were currently muttering to each other. "It's that guy from Dayspring Mountain. 2 days ago, he defeated his opponent in a single blow by using several tens of talismans. Is that the truth? He appears completely unremarkable. Could he be feeling a hole in his pocket? Yi, there doesn't seem to be a cultivation clan with the name of Han in our state of Su. Could he have come from a different country?" Han Li listened to all of their words with a calm expression. He was currently examining his opponent with a calm expression. He was a male disciple in his mid-20s who possessed a refined appearance. He had well-fitted azure robes, and apart from the storage pouch at his waist, there was nothing about him that seemed out of place. He was watching Han Li with a solemn expression. It seemed their discussions had reached his ear as he soon frowned. "Start." As soon as that was said, the young disciple reached for his storage pouch and rushed to raise his hands. In a flash of white light, 2 sparkling icicles shot in Han Li's direction. His body then flickered with azure light before directly pouncing towards Han Li in a gale. It seemed this person had heard of Han Li. He thought to forcefully interrupt Han Li by using the two ice spike talismans and charged towards Han Li with a body lightning technique. After some brief surprise, Han Li couldn't help but smile. His body then blurred, having the two icicles brush past his body. Then seeing that his opponent was excitedly charging towards him with an outreached hand glowing with yellow light, Han Li grew indistinct before disappearing by using his shifting smoke steps. The young disciple's pounce had completely missed, much to his shock. The yellow radiance in his hand dimmed as well. It was actually a net-type magic tool. But before the young disciple could search for Han Li, he suddenly felt a sharp pain from the back of his neck. The world around him became black and he fell to the ground, oblivious to what had happened. A trace of astonishment flickered across the lanky cultivator's face, but he calmly declared, "Dayspring Mountain's Han Li is victorious." A moment ago, Han Li had appeared behind his opponent and chopped at the back of his opponent's neck, knocking him out. Several cultivators had rushed onto the stage and examined the unconscious disciple. After nodding to the lanky cultivator, signifying that there was nothing wrong, they dragged him off the stage. Of course, an uproar was raised from the spectators outside. "Did you see that? What magic technique did he use to appear behind his opponent in the blink of an eye? That's inconceivable." "Fool, that isn't a magic technique. That was clearly a movement technique from the mortal world's martial arts, but I've never seen one used with such high skill." A few of the more experienced disciples managed to recognize the source of Han Li's movements. On the 13th day of the Drifting Cloud Sect selection, the final round was currently being concluded. At that moment, there were 8 core formation cultivators assembled together in a pavilion at the center of the mountain discussing something. 2 of them were the mountain lords of Dayspring Mountain, the middle-aged man surnamed Xin, and the fierce-looking, gray-clothed old man surnamed Yu. A blue-robed old man with a white fluttering beard and a face full of wrinkles frowned and asked, "Are there any junior martial brothers willing to escort the disciples to the sword trial assembly?" A middle-aged man with a lazy expression and a long, thin mustache snorted and indifferently replied, "Senior martial brother Feng, the sword trial assembly will always be dominated by the ancient sword sect, and that vitriolic fellow Jiang Yun is always the one to bring the ancient sword sect members. I don't wish to be embarrassed without reason." A yellow-faced old man shook his head and said, "That's right. I've even heard that in the past few years, the ancient sword sect picked up a disciple that possessed a 9-sword constitution. They will be certain to have him participate. As such, there is no hope of winning this sword trial assembly. Although we do hold a few disciples that possess a peculiar constitution, they are inferior in comparison." And there is also news that the 100 Possibilities sect had acquired a direct descendant of the Guan clan. It is said that, while he was still in Qi condensation, he defeated his clan's elders by using his personally refined magic tools. I fear this could be quite a difficult trip. When the white-haired old man heard this, he revealed an expression of dissatisfaction. He gravely said, "Junior martial brothers, you aren't wrong. The sword trial assembly has already become a stage for the ancient sword sect to display their power, but that is something beyond our control. If our sect does not send over any disciples that participate in the assembly, I fear we won't even acquire a quarter of the wine nectar. Besides, this could easily cause the ancient sword sect to view us with hostility. It would be detrimental to our sect's development in the Dreamcloud Mountain for ages to come. We have more things to worry about, like the many clans that are covetously eyeing the 3 sects of Dreamcloud Mountain. We cannot reveal any weakness to them." A square-faced, red-robed old man with a formal appearance suddenly proposed, "Since senior martial brother Feng said this, I'll be the one to bring the disciples. Rather, I haven't seen the 100 Possibilities sect's elder Chang Zheng in quite a while. A chance to chat would be nice." Old man Feng glanced at him and hesitantly said, "Junior martial brother Duan, as the mountain lord of Firecloud Mountain, you have the most disciples under you. It would be improper for you to leave the sect." The red-robed old man nonchalantly said, "It is of no matter. Junior martial brother Li will still be there to handle Firecloud Mountain. Besides, it's not like I'm leaving the Dreamcloud Mountains. I'm just traveling to the Western Range." With that said, the white-haired old man didn't persist in his objections and nodded his head. He then swept his gaze over the other cultivators before staring at the fierce-looking, gray-clothed old man. He slowly said, "Junior martial brother Yu, I know that you don't have any pressing responsibilities at Dayspring Mountain. How about you assist junior martial brother Duan? Junior Marshal Brother Zin, do you have any objections? The middle-aged man surnamed Zin faintly smiled and said, Of course not. I'm sure Junior Marshal Brother Yu is completely willing to go. The gray-clothed old man cold expression stirred for a long while before he briefly said, Fine, I'll go. The white-haired old man smiled and nodded his head, saying, The group of disciples will be headed by Junior Marshal Brother Duan. Junior Marshal Brother Yu and Junior Marital Sister Song of White Phoenix Mountain will be accompanying him. Once the final round has been concluded, you will meet with 30 selected disciples and give them guidance. Perhaps there will be a chance for our sect yet. After all, we have quite a few powerful candidates this time around. We should be able to give the Ancient Sword Sect and the 100 Possibilities Sect quite the contest. A sly-faced cultivator that had been hiding in the corner yelped in surprise. Junior Marshal Sister Song will also be coming along. How did I not know of this? If that's the case, I can take the place of Junior Marshal Brother Yu. When the rest of the cultivators in the pavilion heard him, there was a brief moment of restlessness. 3 of the cultivators wore an annoyed expression. The white-haired old man's face grew sullen and he snorted. Junior Marshal Brother Meng, what do you mean? I've spoken for half a day, and you didn't speak a single word. But now that you've heard Junior Marshal Sister Song wishes to go, you jump at the chance. I'll tell you the truth. Junior Marshal Sister Song raised the condition that she would only accompany the disciples if I didn't mention that she was going to begin with. Otherwise, given her temperament, why else would she depart from White Phoenix Mountain? As this old man had already reached late core formation, the sly-faced early core formation cultivator didn't dare to dispute this and lowered his head. There were other cultivators that were also tempted, but each of them glanced at one another in dismay, not daring to speak. At that moment, footsteps suddenly came from the outside. A man's voice said, Reporting to Master and Marshal Uncles, the last round has just finished. 3 Foundation Establishment disciples have been selected along with 21 Qi condensation cultivators. I've come with the list of names. The white-robed cultivator's expression relaxed and he said, Oh, since that's the case, come in. Let's take a look. As you wish, the man respectfully replied. Afterwards, he opened the door and entered, revealing himself to be a late Foundation Establishment cultivator with a stately appearance and a tall body. Here are the names and details of the 24 finalists. The man took out a white jade slip from his robes and handed it over to the old man. I'll be taking a look first. The old man nodded his head and took the jade slip into his hand. After taking a look at it with his spiritual sense, he revealed a trace of astonishment. The red-clothed cultivator's expression stirred and he asked, What's the matter? Is there something amiss with the list of names? The others also oddly glanced at the old man. It's nothing. Junior Marshal Brothers, have a look. With that said, the old man calmly passed the jade slip to the yellow-skinned old man at his side. After taking a look at the jade slip, he also revealed astonishment and handed the jade slip to someone else. Not longer after, everyone had looked at the jade slip, and each of them had turbulent expressions. When the Dayspring Mountain Lord Zin read through the jade slip, his expression stirred with particular surprise. The middle-aged man with the thin mustache sighed and slowly said, I truly didn't expect that there would be 6 disciples from Dayspring Mountain to be selected. It seems Junior Marshal Brother Zin has instructed his disciples well. The sly-faced cultivator sourly said, It seems Junior Marshal Brother Zin is determined to win this sword trial assembly. You must have spent quite some effort to cultivate these disciples. Only 3 disciples from his hidden sword mountain had made it on the list, which lost him a considerable amount of face. It definitely wasn't like that. I myself am surprised to see so many people from my Dayspring Mountain being selected, and 2 of them are even at the 10th layer of Qi condensation, named Han Li and Du Dong. If I'm not mistaken, those 2 entered the sect just this past year. It is baffling how they managed to take a place on the list. The middle-aged man surnamed Zin then muttered to himself for a moment and calmly said, Marshal Nephew Gao, how did they manage to acquire victory? The man who had just entered the room promptly replied, Their methods weren't anything strange. Marshal Nephew Du Dong possesses an extremely powerful ice attribute top-grade magic tool. It seems capable of both attacking and defending, and it perfectly complements his techniques as well. As a result, once he froze the ground with his magic tool, all of his opponents were left helpless against his strikes. The middle-aged man with the long mustache interrupted, asking, Oh, what kind of magic tool is it? Can you give us a description? It is a wheel-type magic tool. It has a diameter of about a foot and is engraved with a curved moon. It sparkles with white light when it is activated, can activate an ice attribute barrier in an instant, and can attack with a mist of freezing chi. The middle-aged man's eyes flickered and he said with surprise, "That seems quite similar to the clan's suppressing treasure of the Du clan, the Ice Moon Wheel. The Du clan was exterminated 200 years ago. Could this Du Dong be a descendant?" The white-haired old man curled his beard and unhurriedly said, "That seems quite possible. After all, the Du clan wasn't a small clan. There were sure to be a few direct lineage disciples that escaped calamity and lived in concealment. They probably now believe that with so many years having passed, their enemies are no longer paying any attention to them. As such, they revealed themselves once more.